Okay, dear friends and colleagues, we are beginning our conference, and I'd like to greet everybody, no matter whether you are watching us from near or from far, and what time of the day it is, and what weather you are having. By the way, could you please write in the chat where you are watching us from and what time it is at your place? So, anyway, as I said, no matter what country you are watching us from, and we have just been talking that we have speakers from 4 countries, it is time to start our conference, which is called Trends in Higher Education, Digital Creativity. Let me introduce myself. My name is Alexei Konobayev. I hold PhD in Pedagogical Sciences, and I'm the academic director at Skyeng Online School, as well as editor-in-chief at Title Publishers. But I will be the introducer at today's conference. Let me say a few words about how our conference is going to be organized, as well as let me tell you about some opportunities that we hope this conference is going to bring you. Our main goals are to share best practices in higher education with regards to digital education and to explore current trends in digital education across the globe. We're going to have speakers from several countries, and we'll be able to share our experiences and to hopefully give you some useful ideas and techniques. But we will be very happy if you share your own ideas in the chat. Feel free to ask our speakers questions in the chat. We will be able to either answer them in the chat or right after the presentations for a very brief time. The conference is organized, as I said, by Sky's digital platform for universities. This platform contains a lot of ALT materials, courses, and textbooks. This is the link which you can follow. And if you have not already registered at this platform to get your free access to all these materials, please consider doing this. This platform unites 250 universities, over 30,000 students, and over 2,000 of university teachers. And last year it got EdCrunch Award, which is very, very nice. Now, let me briefly introduce our speakers in order of appearance. Our first speaker today is going to be Ron Moraine, who holds PhD degree in organizational psychology. Dr. Ron Moraine is co-founder and director of studies at the Language Learning Centers Europe, and he works at University of Duisburg-Essen in Germany. The next speaker is going to speak from the USA. It is Dr. Mikhail Mehkov, who holds PhD from California Institute of Technology. He is the consortium chairman of Big Data Researchers and a professor at the Institute of Cognitive and Behavioral Sciences at University of Oregon. The next speaker will present from Indonesia. Rudzika Mardiana works at the Department of English Education. She is a doctor of applied linguistics, and her main interests include teaching language, corpus linguistics, multilingualism, and second language acquisition. And Dr. Madiana will call you for collaboration, so there will be a very interesting opportunity to do some joint research. Our next speaker is going to be Dr. Peter Stepichev, who is an associate professor at the Department of English Philology at Russian State Social University. At the same time, he is the executive director of the National Association of English Teachers, which organizes wonderful, wonderful international conferences. And by the way, at the forthcoming conference in June, one of the primary speakers is going to be Dr. David Crystal, the renowned linguist, and a lot of other brilliant scientists. But Peter Stepichev is going to talk about pedagogy of surprise, which is his very own invention and development. Then we will have a brief appearance by Tatiana Chernigovskaya, a famous neuroscientist who's been working in the field for several decades. Tatiana Chernigovskaya is now on a business trip, but she said that she still will be able to do a brief presentation. Probably she will speak shorter than the other speakers, but and that is going to be the only presentation which is going to be in Russian. But during her presentation, we will be sending the essence on what she is saying into the chat box, so you will be able to read the translation, and then the translation will be attached to the video recording. By the way, we will send you a link to join the National Association of Teachers of English if you're interested, and to take part in the conference to watch it. Okay, and our closing speakers after a short coffee break will be Ekaterina Kolesnikova, who is the head of the School of Foreign Languages at Higher School of Economics, one of the top 5 Russia's universities. The next speaker is going to be Natalia Frolova, who is the head of the Department of Foreign Languages at Linguistics University of Nizhny Novgorod, Russia, and the head of Center for Continuous Professional Development of Teachers. And our final speaker will be Evangeline Priscilla, who works at the Department of English. She is an assistant professor of social science and languages at Vellore Institute of Technology, India. And then I will say a few closing remarks, and that will be the end of today's conference, which is going to be, I hope, very, very informative with this wonderful array of speakers. We will also have two video presentations. We are not going to show them today during the panel discussion, but there is one video presentation by André Hedlund from Brazil and another one by Anton Mark, who currently lives and works in Russia, but originally is from Belgium and from Canada. They cannot present live today, but they have sent their video presentations, which you can watch on uniskyes.com in the Skyes Conference tab. The access is open, so have a look at that. Here are the presentations, and this is where you can find them on the platform. And we have had 4 pre-conference weeks. We had weekly topics for video submissions, and people have been sending their videos. These were the topics: e-learning and e-content, new trends in teaching process organization, creative teaching methods, and international projects and programs. You will find all the videos that people have sent, the videos which were accepted on our digital platform. And also, I'd like to announce 2 contests which will help you to win some money, because after all, it is very nice when teachers can get some money, some extra money for their teaching. The first contest is a student registration contest. Students can get access to free learning content at uniskyes.com, and you can get prizes. If you live outside Russia, the prize is a $400 worth Amazon certificate. And if you live inside Russia, you can get a 30,000 rubles Ozon certificate, so you can buy whatever you need for either your professional work or activities or for something else. And this is how you can take part in this contest. All you need is to log in the Skyes platform. Then you register there as many students as you can and give them at least 2 homeworks to do. You may choose from whatever English learning materials there are. And on May the 30th, the participant who registers the greatest number of students will get the prize. And there is one more grant opportunity. This grant is for those teachers who live in and work in Russia. This contest is in Russian, that's why the information is in Russian. It is presented by Rosobrsoyuz. This is the Russian Education Union. You can find some more information about this contest. You can see it on the slide. I don't think that, since this is an international conference, I don't think that we should spend too much time on presenting this information, because you can take a look at it, but you have a chance to win the grant of 1 million rubles from the Russian Education Union. Here are the contest dates. Sorry about the typo. I hope you haven't noticed it, but now you have. So here are the contest dates. The submission of materials starts on June the 1st and continues throughout the major part of summer until August the 10th. And the results will be announced on October 15th. And the projects will be discussed publicly, so you can take part in discussion of projects, even if you do not, for example, take part in this contest. I would also like to invite you to join our 2 Telegram channels. One of them is dedicated to Skyes Conference, and the second Telegram channel is dedicated to education. This is our partner, and you will find a lot of interesting materials about digital education, higher education, and learning materials. So thank you very much for your attention. I shouldn't really take up any longer, and I'd like to give word to Dr. Ron Morain from University of Duisburg-Essen, Germany.
Okay, well, thank you, Alexei, and thank you everyone for being here today. I feel very privileged to be the first person here speaking at the conference. And again, we're talking about trends in higher education and digital creativity. And I'd like to start by just talking about proven frameworks for online instructional design. And just a little bit of background. I am working at the University Duisburg-Essen, and together with many universities here in the area, I started in 2007. Not only do I do instructional design, but I also do learning environment design. And so here you see some pictures of the Language Learning Center. Was a combination of work of many different universities doing a very positive learning environment for teachers. We did this for almost 15 years, and it's the basis for what I'm going to present today. I was so excited about what we created, so I wanted to take that show on the road. We took it to Japan, we took it to Greece, we took it to Germany, all over Germany, Russia, Italy, France, and the UK, and just wanted to share my ideas of what we had learned at the Language Learning Center with teachers all over the world. And my goal was to, just invite teachers to join that CLIL, TBL, PBL, EMI, all that, with an interdisciplinary content approach and flipped learning in an online learning world. And I called it my student engagement party. And, through my journeys, I discovered a lot of things. But at a conference in Japan, I was asked the question, who is a contemporary teacher? And anyone who knows me knows I like mind mapping. And I actually drew this mind map, just as as the answer to that question. But you'll see in the middle, which I thought was the most important thing, was that we, really, if we consider ourselves a contemporary teacher, we need to be methodology savvy, and we need to take, constructivist approaches to really how we're, how we're doing things, and what we're doing. And through my travels, no matter where I was at, I always made it a point to meet students and see what the students were saying and what they were thinking. Because, we concentrate so much on teaching that we sometimes forget about the students and learning. So, I've met students, again, in all the different countries that I visited. And, one thing that I saw that students were seeking was that sense of belongingness, that sense of being part of that learning process, and also teaching process. And another thing that I learned from students was that they had questions about what was going on. Now, as a, organizational psychologists, we call those questions of mystery, and those happen in any organization. But, they happen a lot in the students' heads, and they're questions that sometimes they're afraid to ask. And this is just a list of some of the questions that I was able to elicit from students as they were giving me feedback and their thoughts about, language learning, teaching, and how they wanted to be part of that process. So these were the questions that they were asking, what we call questions of mystery. And that was just a short introduction. And I always say, but wait a minute, isn't this supposed to be about planning and frameworks for, proven frameworks for teaching? Well, it is, but I just want to put that into perspective first, and that's why I said that, because here it is about planning for online instruction and using proven models that work for teachers, and for us to see ourselves as teachers, as designers of a learning process. But we need models, and we need proven models that work. But I wrote this many years ago because I felt that planning is sort of like a journey. You're planning a journey, and if you really think it out, it's like planning a journey for the students. And where do you want to take those students? And we can still be creative as teachers, but we need models. We need something to help us to do that planning and designing. And what do we think about when we're really planning something, designing a class for that learner experience? And, I looked around and, sort of came up with these ideas of what we should consider when we're actually planning uh, for instruction. And it really doesn't make a difference if we're doing content instruction or language instruction, but these are some of the aspects that we really should consider when we're planning that class and designing it. Well, when we're planning and designing, we're going to have some challenges. And this is just a list of some of those challenges that we have. And I do want to point out that I'm, really referring more to the flipped classroom, online learning, and, maybe we might even get to the point of hybrid learning. But these are some of the challenges that we as teachers face when we're planning classes for our students and planning a positive learning experience for them. Well, the COVID situation threw us into a point of almost cognitive dissonance, and we were told we had to go online immediately. And then we were thrown all these ideas, and we saw just a jungle of things and webinars coming at us. And how were we going to integrate technology into this online learning experience and still make it a positive experience for our learners? So we as teachers had to make many decisions on how we were going to effectively plan this class. And one of the things that really we as teachers had to face was our own digital literacy, not just the digital literacy of our students, but our own, and all the things and skills that we were going to have in order to design an instructional learning cycles online. And so these are some of the things that we had to consider here. But there was another little elephant in the room, and this digital literacy, as we call it, that elephant in the room was technology, and everybody started calling it sort of digital literacy. And as I pointed out, there are some, things that we as teachers had to face about digital literacy, but nobody was talking too much about the digital divide, and that's really parity, and also digital equity, which is inclusion. A lot of the things that we talk about, especially the ones that are very Eurocentric, the webinars that we saw were very Eurocentric, and we're considering all the different things that we had to consider, because not everybody has the equipment and the tech savvy that they're going to need to actually successfully participate in an online learning experience. But when we look at, what, we were thrown into this emergency online learning and designing for online learning and learning experiences, I want to take a few steps back and, ask ourselves, and we as teachers do need to ask ourselves, what were the lessons learned from this past year and a half as we were thrown into this online learning world, and what worked and what didn't work? Well, one of the things that we, should think about is when we're planning an online learning and teaching experience, it requires a shift in the way we think, this mind shift that has to be dealt with, and to break through the obstacles to learning and discover the hidden potential that we as teachers really have. And another thing that we also had to encounter was that maybe our approaches to learning are something that we also need to consider when we're working with young learners, teenagers, university students, and that we, take very pedagogic approaches to teaching teenagers, and that's okay. But we also need to think about the older teenagers, the ones reaching 17, 18, 19, and getting ready for university, and university students, and incorporating andragogic approaches to learning, and hopefully lead them to self-directed, which of course is pedagogy. And my God, when people hear these words, they think, well, I just thought it was all pedagogical, but it's not. And we need to consider these things when we're planning and designing for our learners. Another thing is, taking the learners into consideration and getting them involved in their learning process and assigning roles and responsibilities to them. So I created this model right here. Actually, it's the model that I gave to the International Teachers Associations to help them plan their online learning workshops, to move it from just talking heads and webinars to really a very interactive approach to learning online. So, here you see a model that we use to make sure that the students are really involved in taking responsibility and self-directedness, leading them to self-directedness online. Another thing that we need to look at is the model of 21st century skills. And, I don't want to get too much into that because we do know what the 4 Cs are. But the only question we have to ask ourselves is, are we integrating that into the design of the learning experience? Well, we start here with something that everybody knows about. And, what about Bloom's taxonomy and what role does that play in design? Well, I think that that's one of the more important models that we have to look at. When I meet teachers and have traveled all over the world, I always see that they never even heard sometimes of Bloom taxonomy, but it is a very important model to know, to learn and understand and integrate into how you design classes, whether that be face-to-face or online. Another thing I always ask teachers is, what is your TPAC? Have you considered that? And here is a graph, a chart of what TPAC really is. TPAC is the acronym for technology and pedagogy and content knowledge. And this was something that we found was actually the biggest problem when we're thrown into the emergency online learning, and how we developed that very quickly, because questions came up of what works in the face-to-face class might not work in the online learning experience. And so, questions of pedagogic knowledge really came up. We were good at content and good at presenting that and working with it in a face-to-face learning environment, but would that really work in the online learning experience? So of course, here you see a model that I created for myself and that I show to teachers about what my TPAC is and how I integrate the different apps and different technologies into the learning experience. So here you see sort of a very practical, I created this for myself, but I do require my teachers to create a TPAC model for themselves and explain it to me and their students in order to make sure that the students are going to feel a sense of efficacy or success during the online learning experience. Now, when we get to older models, one of the things that's very important in the European community is the methodology of CLIL. And if you are working with textbooks, you'll know that the more revised textbooks you always use a CLIL approach. So if you're using a textbook-driven methodology in your classroom, you should be able to understand what CLIL is. But many teachers still have a problem really understanding it because there's so many different explanations of it. But as just like we have the 4 Cs of 21st century learning, we also have the 4 Cs of CLIL, which are communication, cognition, culture, and content. And to take that one step further, here you see really what that is, because if we talk about skills in CLIL, we're talking about speaking, writing, listening, and reading, and vocabulary and grammar. And those are the 6 aspects that every textbook has. And teachers like to use textbook because it involves all of those skills. But there's a little bit more to that. And another thing that I discovered in very early in my career when I started doing instructional design was that CLIL was a fantastic framework to work with, but it left something out, and that was task-based learning. And here we see just a definition by one of my colleagues here for task-based learning, and that simple definition of learning by doing. That's what task-based learning was. Well, I soon discovered that it's not so simple. Sometimes it's just learning by doing. So I did a little bit of investigation into task-based learning and combining that with CLIL. And then here I run across, Merrill's principles of instruction, where Merrill says that, just throw the students into problem solving, give them a task, and they'll be able to do it in the language and through the production of a product within the task-based learning cycle, that they'll be able to acquire the language in a natural way. Well, that sounds good, but that might not always work for everybody, especially learners from a lower level. Task-based learning becomes a little bit complicated for them. It's only when you get to a really higher B1 that you can effectively integrate task-based learning into the language learning process. So Merrill is right about some things, but it's not applicable to many of the language levels that we're dealing with, especially when we're dealing in the classroom with differentiated learning. Well, we get into some classic models like the ADDIE model. Looks very complicated, and there's books written about it. There's so much research about it. It's wonderful, it's fantastic, and it is, but it can be overwhelming for many teachers. So here we see a more simplified form of what the ADDIE model is for instructional design. Analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation. Well, some of the pros, there's many pros and cons to the ADDIE model, but one of the biggest, questions that teachers had with the ADDIE model was that evaluation came at the end. And we see with more modern, contemporary approaches to teaching and learning that we should not really put evaluation at the end. Another word for evaluation is assessment. That we need to really see evaluation in the middle of everything. And it's the thing that we should be working everything around. So now there's a revised model of ADDIE, where evaluation and assessment comes in the end and at many different steps throughout really the instruction, online learning, face-to-face experience. Another thing that we need to think about when we're really planning and designing, it's called the constructive alignment model for instructional design, where there's three aspects of really instructional design. One of them is what are the learning outcomes, and learning assessment, and teaching methodologies that we're going to actually use. And I liked this very much. But then one of my colleagues asked me, Ron, that works well, but there's a little bit more to that. And there's some aspects missing when you really take the backward design. And we talked about it. And then that led us to, the Delta process, which, yes, we take into consideration the constructive alignment aspects of outcomes assessment and design, but we need to add the curriculum context. What context are we really working within, and also reflection, that metacognitive aspect that's really important when we're doing that. Metacognitive can be simple things like formative assessment, but metacognitive means getting students to think about their learning and how they're really progressing and how they see that progression in order for them to reach a point of efficacy. Another thing that we need to think about when we're thinking about planning a class is performance-based learning. And this right here is just a fantastic thing to integrate into the instructional design process, because here we can kill many birds with one stone when we integrate performance-based learning as a way of formative assessment and also summative assessment. Many teachers feel a little bit uncomfortable with performance-based learning because the students have a voice in exactly how they're going to perform a task, and they also have a voice in how it's going to be assessed. Now, when we're doing exam-oriented learning, and we know that we have to prepare students for a test, some teachers say, that doesn't fit into the way we have to do things, but it can. If you just give students a chance and believe in them, you'll see that it works very well. And we can still prepare students for exams effectively and successfully by integrating performance-based learning at intervals throughout the learning process. We also need to think about the flipped classroom, and really, what is the flipped classroom and how does flipped learning work? Well, another thing that we never really consider when we're talking about the flipped classroom is that we're dealing with synchronous and asynchronous learning. And that means that we have to change the way we approach learning. Many teachers think that learning happens right there in the classroom and forget that more learning happens outside the classroom and the social aspects of learning. So if we're going to do integrate flipped learning and the flipped learning model into how we design our classes, we do need to take into consideration the synchronous aspects and the asynchronous aspects. Well, that leads us to the inquiry-based approach and how we integrate the inquiry-based approach. And this was really a big step for me as I started to really think about how I designed classes and what were successful and what were not successful classes. And I found that the more successful classes were the ones that I had integrated the inquiry-based model into the design of the classes and the implementation. Now, the inquiry model, deals with exploring, creating, investigating, and processing. But this is the aspect of design from the aspect of the teacher, but it's about the learner. And so we got to move it from the teacher to the learner, and move it to them and what they think and how they wonder and investigate and record and things that are happening within the inquiry-based model. And I think this is a great way to really see that and change the perspective of the inquiry-based approach when you integrate that into the design and implementation of your classes. Well, that moves us to PBL and what really is PBL. And again, I feel that this is one of the more higher forms that we need to be integrating into the design of our classes. This model that you see here was created by the Buck Institute in the United States, and is the model used throughout the world for integrating PBL. I ask you to all please go to Google and Google the Buck Institute and PBL, because you will find some wonderful ideas of how to integrate PBL into your learning cycles, whether that be face-to-face or online. Well, there's mindsets have to be changed. Many different things have to be considered when a teacher starts to work with PBL, because it does change the way you instruct and teach, whether that be face-to-face online or online. And these are some of the 10 aspects that we need to think about and change sometimes in order to effectively integrate PBL into our face-to-face or online learning experiences that we're having with students. And here we see some of the wonderful benefits that the students can have from PBL. But when I reached the point of successfully integrating PBL and TBL into my lessons, I was encountered with something else. And that was, how do I make these complicated methods and approaches and, instructional design easy for the teachers that were, working with me? And that's why I came up with the mind map concept of teaching and learning, because, students and learners need visuals and graphic facilitation to help them to understand what's going on and give them a roadmap to the learning process and where are they at. And what you're looking at here is I combined TBL and PBL and the inquiry-based approach into just one visual without ever explaining that to teachers or students. And I tested it to see if it worked with thousands of students and hundreds of teachers, and we found that it worked well. And what you don't see here, of course, is performance-based learning, because it does have to be assessed. Well, that leads us to the hybrid model. And really, we will never be able to get to this point. We hear this so much, going on about what really is hybrid learning. We will not get to that point. And many universities are trying to reach that point. There's many barriers to overcome, but before we could ever reach as a teacher, as an individual, as someone who wants to develop ourselves and see ourselves as a contemporary teacher, we're going to have to look at some of the models that I've presented to you before, and really look at how we understand that and how we integrate that into the way we plan our learning cycles for our students. Uh, because the hybrid model is one of the more complicated models and requires teachers to have a high sense of technical know-how and methodology know-how in order to really reach hybrid, because what we did in face-to-face is not the same thing as what's happening online. And in order to really get a good, hybrid model, we as teachers need to develop ourselves and the other frameworks that I presented to you so that we can reach a point of being able to teach and use the hybrid model, which of course is a combination of all the models that I showed you. I'd like to wrap it up and say that uh, yes, it might sound a little bit overwhelming, but if we just take a couple of steps back, look at some of the things that I presented to you, and think about, are we using them? Maybe you are. Maybe you just didn't know that you were doing it. Uh, but really take a step back and ask yourself, you know, am I doing it right? And reflect, not only expect your students to reflect on their learning, but for you as a teacher to reflect on your own teaching. And sometimes we need those models in order to reflect, because we need something to really get to the point of questioning what we do and how we do it. I believe that the most important thing that we as teachers need to really think about and consider is the importance of self-directed learning. Because if this is really what we think about when we're planning something, isn't it something that we want our students to be self-directed and planning? We want our students to be self-directed learners and drive their own car, be responsible for their own self-development, and creators of content instead of just giving them content to digest. We want them to be critical thinkers, decision makers. We want them to be problem solvers and risk takers. We want them to be fact formers. We need them to also think of in the sense of, process oriented, and not just content creators, and them, digesting what we give them, but really understand the process that they're involved in for their self-development, because it's through that and understanding the process that we turn our students into lifelong learners. I do believe that if this is our goal, that we want self-directed learners, then we need to design our courses around that concept of self-directed learning and to meet the students' needs, not just for now, but for the future. I want to thank you very much for coming today. And I would like to turn this back over to Alexi. And if you want more information, please follow me on social media, where I reach over 3 million teachers every week. I use my Facebook account and my VK account as a way to reach teachers all over the world, sharing my years of experience with them, and give you a lot of information that you can really access very easily in order to do self-directed learning for yourself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Ron. Some people have been asking whether they would be able to download your presentation, but I think it would be the best idea if they find you on Facebook, and Dr. Ron Moraine is very, very active on Facebook and is happy to share a lot of very interesting and useful resources. So feel free to find Dr. Ron Moraine on Facebook and follow him, because this would be a truly invaluable source of information on teaching. Here is some statistic data. I have been reading the chat, and I see that we have people watching us from Azerbaijan, from the USA, from the Netherlands, from Kazakhstan. I'm sorry, I'm looking down because I'm reading from my mobile device. We have people watching us from Prидnestrovia. We have people from Malta. We have people from many regions of Russia. I think I've already mentioned the USA. We have people from the UK. Among our viewers is a dean of Faculty of Foreign Languages of a university, which is also really great. So this is a wonderful multinational, multicultural professional community, and this is really great. Now, I'd like to People are asking, how can I find John on Facebook? Just type Ron Moraine in the search in the search window. Oh, we have a person who is watching us from Peru as well. So it is not only a multinational conference, it is also a multi-continental conference, which is really, really nice. And greetings to those who are watching us from across the Atlantic. We are truly this is truly a global span of the conference. Now I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who is Dr. Mikhail Mягков. We are very happy to give the floor to Dr. Mikhail Mягков, and I'd like to remind that Dr. Mягков holds PhD from California Institute of Technology. He is the head of consortium. He is the consortium chairman of Big Data Researchers and a professor at the Institute of Cognitive and Behavioral Sciences, University of Oregon. Welcome to Mikhail Mягков.
Alexei, thank you very much for the introduction. Hey guys, so for the next 30 minutes or so, we'll be talking about big data in the context of universities and educational programs. And I understand that people before me have been talking a lot about how to teach English, so this is going to be a little bit different. We'll also talk about education, but we'll talk about education in the context of developing actually new educational programs, making the universities more friendly to new digital world, and actually introducing students to completely new opportunities which appeared just in the last few years. I'm a mathematician by education. I've been teaching game theory, decision-making, big data to political scientists, economists, sociologists, you name it, for the past over 25 years. In Moscow for 5 years, I've been the first vice president of the Skolkovo Institute of Science and Technology, which is the innovation-based university, unique in Russia, built together with MIT. And for the past 5 years, I've been essentially working on probably one of my most favorite projects of my entire life, and actually developing the new infrastructure in a number of Russian universities where students, faculty, postdocs, any members of university communities actually have access and opportunities to dive into the ocean of big data, work with data, develop their own projects, and then turn those projects into something useful academically, commercially, socially, and so on and so forth. So I'd like to start, let's see, I think I can share the screen, and I'll start with the presentation. Unfortunately, the presentation is in Russian, so I apologize for that. At some point, I'll turn it into English, and it will be available for you. The Russian version is also going to be available for you. So let me get to the question of big data first. So when we talk about big data, one thing we got to realize that this is a relatively new phenomenon, and it appeared only in the last 10 years or so. So the graph that you see on the screen is essentially the frequency of searches on big data in Google. And as you can see, this graph started rising at around 2010, 2011, right after the appearance of smartphones. So obviously, social networks, human digital footprint, all those things were generated by us human beings using smartphones has been generating tons of data. In 2010, Eric Schmidt, the head of Google, had been talking at the conference and basically saying that for the previous 7 years, their company acquired about 5 exabyte of data. Well, 5 exabyte is 5 and a bunch of zeros out there. So just to give you a comparison, in 2018, the same amount Google Corporation had been acquiring during 1 day. So 7 years before 2010 and 1 day in 2018. Of course, now it's even more. So basically, question is, what is big data and why is it so important? Well, is big data is just when it's more than 1 terabyte? Is it the data that we can't really put in the computer? Is it any kind of data? Big data is just something that had been invented by marketologists. Well, it really doesn't matter. But what does matter is that now we live in the world where a lot of decisions, a lot of issues, a lot of policies are made basically using the data, if not outright. You probably all heard things like artificial intelligence, machine learning. So all those things are essentially instruments which allow us to use data to do something about that. Now, question is it dangerous? Is it good to use big data? In a few years, we all be using big data or not? Will our lives be changed forever? These are all very interesting questions. So the thing about data that we have to understand right now is that we are really in the uncharted waters. As I said, the huge amount of data just started appearing in the last few years. And basically, as a society, as a bunch of human beings, we have no idea how to deal with them. What to do with the data, what kind of tools we should be using, what kind of policies as the state we should be implementing based on the data. We are now in the process of learning, and that's where universities come in really handy. When we started our program, first we started at Tomsk State University. Now it evolved onto the whole bunch of universities in Russia. It's Moscow State University, it's High School of Economics in Moscow, it's Northeastern Federal University, and so on and so forth. So basically, our principle was very simple. Hey, we're going to make the infrastructure, the data, everything totally open to all the scholars, faculty, students. We're not going to charge any money. Go ahead and start playing with that. And we, on our side, are going to provide with guidance, with tools, instruments. And for that, we partnered with several key industrial partners. I'm going to show you in a second who they are. So on the bottom screen, you can see these are such companies as Yandex Cloud, Megaputer, Cribroom, Goods Forecast, Headhunter, Expert. We partnered with some even charities like Charitable Foundation headed by Vladimir Potanin, and so on and so forth. So at this point, we have 31 universities participating. We have 7 big centers of big data in Russia. And we involve students, faculty, and other members of university community into research, education, and innovation using the data, using the opportunities that they are presented. So basically, our services and the infrastructure that we developed became really in demand when the pandemic hit last year, because what it turned out that all the universities immediately went into the online mode, and they immediately started facing the problems with storing the data, working with the data, analyzing the data generated through newly online educational process, as well as through all sorts of different human digital footprints, especially through social networks, which needed to be analyzed. Students were complaining, students were showing where the room for improvement was for various universities. And of course, the Ministry of Higher Education in Russia, as well as universities themselves, were very eager to quickly understand what was going on. Just to give you an idea, right when pandemic started, we created a university-based platform called UniProfi, which was analyzing students' digital footprint, their data, to match them with potential employers, because students largely lost opportunities to make some extra money in cafes and places like that. So it was very urgent need to find some new employment opportunities for students. So we used the database platform to organize this process. Another example, various regional administrations asked us to quickly show them what was happening in terms of people's attitudes toward various changes which happened during the pandemic. And of course, the social networking, essentially the infrastructure that we developed with the data was one of the, if not the best tool. And very quickly, we were able to put together several universities and help them resolve those issues. Of course, we haven't forgotten about our regular programs. For example, we are working very actively on the new international ranking of universities called 3 Mission of University. And that's where, especially in the 3rd mission, universities' influence on the society, big data come very handy. Okay, so I'm going to skip this slide. I don't think that's that important. So let me just tell you what is really important. So we created the network of universities, industrial partners, and consumers of those services, all centered around the universities, where the key goal is not just complete certain projects, but also teach students, educate students in the area of big data, and increase the value of human capital. So to do that, we of course couldn't do it only in universities themselves. We needed help and instruments of industrial partners. On the other hand, industrial partners wouldn't be able to do it without the universities because they have their own things to do and they don't have essentially resources for projects which are socially important. So again, one of my favorite projects, for example, is dynamic measuring of quality of life in the regions, which is basically done by students largely. Okay. So let me just skip this for lack of time. This is a large presentation and is going to be available for you. So what are the sources of our data? Well, first and foremost, these are social media. We do lots of data from social media. We essentially do the whole segment of Russian internet. And then these are all sorts of state purchasing data, Wikipedia, searches on Google and Yandex, universities' own data, other open data. Okay, so just to give you an idea that, for example, at this point, we have about 90 million live accounts, about 150 million communities that we essentially trace at real time through centers and several universities live. And in the last few minutes, I'm going to talk about 2 very important student-based projects. So one of which I already mentioned, that project is called UniProfi. It's the service of smart employment of students based upon their own resumes, of course, and their digital footprint and the social networks. So the problem is that $20 billion are basically spent every year by business in Russia to augment educational skills of students. So essentially, the businesses have to add to student education and spend a lot of money on that. So, so what we did, we took as a pilot project, we took Tomsk State University, which is probably the best university, or definitely one of the best universities outside of Moscow and St. Petersburg. And we did a really in-depth benchmark analysis of where the demands were, and on the side of both university graduates who already run or own companies or at top management in serious companies, and students themselves. And then we started matching them, and essentially it was very productive work. So we partnered with the leading job searches engine in Russia, such as Headhunter. And we got, in the first pilot program with about 5,000 students, we matched them with hundreds of university graduates who were in a position to offer employment. And we got, in the end, great results. Another project for educational development, which we basically started in our company, it's called ActTrue. This is the infrastructural solution for hybrid education. Essentially, there is really no analog of this in its way, shape, or form anywhere in the world. There are some in the United States, but this is really the truly innovative decision. This is the integrated system between hardware and software, which allows to seamlessly record lectures in the classroom when the professor is in the classroom, and some students are in the class, some students are in the cafe, some students are at home, some students are in the hallway. So basically, it's a totally spread out solution for hybrid lecturing. And you see, the problem here is that you not only have to record lectures in high quality so that they could be then analyzed and watched by students, but you also need to make it very easily for professor. You have to record the blackboard, the presentation, the professor himself or herself, but you also have to store them in the right way, stream them simultaneously with the lecture itself or in an offline regime, and then do the searches. You have to index all this data. So basically, at this point, you start working with huge amount of data, and you have to have the infrastructure for the data analysis. So basically, this system, if anybody is interested, would be more than happy to talk more about the system. So this system essentially helps solving the problems where after the pandemic, especially, a lot of educational processes will be in the hybrid form, with some students being in a classroom and some students outside of the classroom. And finally, I'd like to say a few words before I'll be happy to answer whatever questions you may have about data diving. Data diving is our signature project. These are our specialized schools of applied data analysis. So basically, what do we do in those schools? We bring people from all sorts of different backgrounds of the society, and we introduce them to opportunities, methods, and tools which exist now to work with data and to make decisions based upon data. So these people could be professionals, these people could be some mid to high level government officials, of course, representatives of universities, or just private citizens. We even did the data diving program in Russian school for highly gifted and talented students called Sirius in Sochi. So these are high school students. So basically, what do? We take this ocean of data and the fact that it's uncharted waters and that we need to dive into the data to actually start learning something about them. And we introduce in a very kind of normal and easy to understand format it to the whole variety of members of the society, including, of course, students at the universities and members of academic schools. So in this schools, we teach them various competencies in the area of data collection and storage. We do a bunch of really good master classes from leading experts in big data. We show them how to organize the infrastructure of data collection. And of course, most importantly, we engage them in the project-based learning where they do their own projects and where they use the instruments of the industrial partners, as well as, of course, our own instruments. So let's see. Within that data diving exercise, we did the program called the CDO, which is Chief Data Officers Education. At that point, we educated 45 teams, about 500 people, 45 pilot projects. So been done again using the infrastructure and in cooperation with the Skolkovo Institute of Science and Technology, with our universities, which are our partners. Okay, so now we are, again, within that framework of data diving, we've designed a whole bunch of other schools which are conducting all over Russia. And again, the goal there is to essentially bring in as many students as possible from all different layers of the society to introduce them to the methods and mechanisms of big data. So just, one project I'm going to mention, and then I'm going to get to Q&A if you guys have any. So basically, the project I want to mention, it's called Education During the Times of Coronavirus, Big Data as the Instrument of Measuring Societal Reaction. So when coronavirus started, we were asked to very quickly tell the government officials, the Ministry of Higher Education, what was going on in the educational field in terms of difficulties, problems, issues. So what we did, we looked at about 310 universities from 80 Russia's regions. We looked at about 3 million, 1.12 million accounts of students, about 3 million messages, about over 1,000 informal university communities. And we traced them in real time. And basically what we found was very interesting. We found that the key difficulties for students during those times were not technical difficulties, were not the difficulties related to internet, computer technologies, and so on and so forth. But there were mostly difficulties related to social deprivation. So they really wanted to be with their with their friends at lectures, and that's what they were missing. They really wanted to be part of the educational process in person. So the social deprivation was basically the main problem and the main source of issues, depressions, and so on and so forth. So this is just one example of the project that we did. And by the way, while we were doing this project, we realized that the biggest difficulty was to actually take the raw data and turn that raw data into structured data. So we spread the job among about 10 universities, and a bunch of students were working on that. And of course, the problem was that we didn't have any standards for them. It was very hard to do cross-checking of quality of their work. So what we came out of this with, we realized that we need to introduce a new set of competences, or I call it the new profession, which we basically invented. And that's called the raw content analytic. It's basically a kind of low-level introductory profession for students who can start working with data. They don't need any special preparation for that. We designed a very effective and quick educational program where we give them a certificate. And then we introduce various tools which help them turn this raw data into the structured data. That's what any kind of process of data analysis begins with. And then they can grow into data scientists, they can grow into the managers of content analysts. But this is the first step which needed to be done. And now we are going to educate a lot of students in that area. So I think I will stop here, and I'll be very happy to answer whatever questions you guys may have. I think we have about 5 minutes left. Anybody wants to ask a question? Thank you so much. Well, if there are no more questions, then I'm happy to give that extra couple minutes to the next speaker.
Okay, thank you very much. There is one question from Yelena Rybikina in the chat, and the question is, will you be so kind to share with your experience how to teach the moral points?
How to teach the moral points? Wow, it's actually a very good question. You know, it's a difficult question. In our consortium, we have one of my colleagues who is working on actually quantifying the cultural code of Russian people. Her name is Ekaterina Mityagina. She is from Vyatka State University from Kirov. Yeah, this is basically in what we do with the data, that probably as close as it gets to trying to actually kind of have a scientific approach to teaching the moral points. As a person, not as a data scientist, I can tell you that I grew up in the Soviet Union, and I was in a pioneer organization in Komsomol, so I went through all those things. And whatever we think about this old Soviet, communist ideologies, I have to tell you that they were doing a pretty good job in teaching us good moral points. Of course, it's impossible to do right now. However, as I said, if you are interested in actually learning how to translate our cultural predisposition and our pre-programmed moral points into the educational environment, then I can refer you to Ekaterina. She, by the way, just a few weeks ago, introduced that project to Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin at the meeting of leaders of Russia, and he really liked that idea. So you may like that idea too.
Okay, thank you so much for the answer. And it seems that people are saying thank you in the chat. They say thank you, thanks a lot, and so on. So it looks like currently there are no more questions. And I'd like to give the floor to Rizdika Mardiana, professor from Department of English Education in Indonesia. And we're happy to hear Rizdika.
Hello, thank you, Alexei. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity giving to me to share my experience in teaching writing using Corpus. I'm from Indonesia. I teach in STKIP Muhammadiyah Bogor and IPB University. Thank you for joining us today. I will share my slides first. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a discipline-specific corpus to learn collocation. But before that, I want to ask you 3 questions. The first one is, have you ever heard about corpus or corpora? The second one is, have you ever used corpus or corpora in learning English writing? Or in what occasion do you use corpus? So you can answer these questions in the comment. You can write down your answer in comment. Thank you very much. I would like to know it. Okay. So next, yeah. So why do I use the term a discipline-specific corpus? So the definition of discipline-specific corpus, it is a corpus that is specific to someone's discipline or field of study. It comes from many sources, so it depends on what subject you teach to your students. For example, I teach my students how to write a research article, so that's why the corpus will build up from many research articles from many reputable international journals, published in reputable international journals. So they will yeah, use this corpus to see the instances, examples, how to use some words, how to mix up some words, how to order words in a good pattern of sentence. Now let's see, yeah, because we are talking about collocation, let's see the definition of collocation. The first definition is a combination of words in a language that happens very often and more frequently than would happen by chance. The second definition is the fact of two or more words often being used together in a way that happens more frequently than would happen by chance. So actually collocation is, yeah, for example, in Indonesian, there is a phrase berbeda dengan. So usually my student translate it word by word, and the result of the translation is different with, which different means berbeda, with means dengan. As we know in English, we know that it should be different from, different and from. So it would be a mistake or error in writing their research article, and they need to revise this error or these mistakes by consulting with the corpus. Okay, so the problem is not also from the collocation. My student also have a problem in writing a research article. Writing a research article is a must, and publishing a research article is a requirement before they graduate from their university. And the technical problem is they usually make their or write their research article in Indonesian version, and then it will be translated into English word by word. And yeah, usually they will produce inappropriate collocation. So that's why they need to learn collocation. So I try to find a solution, and the solution comes from some scholars. For example, Ye Liu and Lee in 2007, they proved that Tango as a useful tool for learning synonym and their collocation. And then another proof comes from Xie and Liu in 2008. Use concordancing software and Corpus inform online academic writing to facilitate students in writing their academic reports. That's why I try to teach my students to write research articles using Corpus. But online Corpus is so, yeah, the sources is so are huge, and it is not specific to their field of study. That's why I try to find another solution. So I try to find a solution from concordancing software. So what is concordancing software? It is a software displaying all instances of a word or phrase stated by Timis in 2015. It can also refers to a tool to find instances of words and phrases in real context. In real context, it means if you try to teach your students to write magazine, for example, you can have a corpus with a lot of online magazines in your corpus. So your students can refer to the corpus, how to write a magazine, how to deal with the collocation and word order, and etc. That's the real context. And then a concordancing software also can be described as a tool to analyze corpora, stated by Jones and Waller in 2015. It is also an open access corpus analysis software. So basically, you need to download to install this software in your computer or your laptop. And this is as a tool to yeah, later on you have to build a corpus, and then the corpus will be loaded to your concordensing software. And the concordensing software is a tool. The material is the corpus is your material. You can see that. Okay, next. Then I found EdTat. EdTat stands for Adelaide Text Analysis Tool. Maybe some of you have known this. So this concordensing software was developed in 2007 by Tim. One of the team, Margaret Cargill, introduced me in 2015, introduced EdTat to me. And from yeah and then from that year I try to learn how to use EdTat, and then I transfer my knowledge to my students. So let's talk about EdTat more. So EdTat is Adelaide Text Analysis Tool. EdTat has many strengths. So the first one, it can conduct basic word and phrase searches. It also can conduct associated word and phrase searches, and it can assist you in constructing corpora. It can provide frequency lists of words appearing both left and right of search terms. It can print and save results, and the corpora built by, with EdTat can be saved to this for later use. But there are minimum requirements to use EdTat. So EdTat will run in Windows 2000 or later, Macintosh OS 10.4 or later, but requires Java version 1.5 installed. And for the RAM, the minimum RAM required is 512 megabyte, but 1 gigabyte RAM is recommended. And also EdTat needs a discipline-specific corpus, actually a corpus, but because it is only from one field of study, I call it a discipline-specific corpus for the concordensing process. So how to construct a discipline-specific corpus? First, you have to choose the research articles if you teach your students to write research articles. But if you teach your student to write magazine or newspaper, so you have to choose the sources, the magazine or the newspaper, the one that are written by native speaker with the current English, current usage of preposition, verb tenses, or other grammatical features. And then you can only save the text without the graphs, without pictures, without tables. So only the text in TXT files, and then you can collect all the files into one folder. And later on, you will load the folder to EdTat. So how to prepare text for concordensing? So you have to know what kind of document you have. If it is a Microsoft Word document, you can open it and save it as text-only file. If it is a text from web pages, select all the text, copy and paste into a Word document and save it as a text-only document. If it is a PDF document, copy and paste only the text into a Word document and save it as a text-only file. I think it is not difficult because basically you only need to erase all of the elements except the text, yeah, and then you just save it in TXT files. So here is how EdTat will appear after you download and install it in your computer. You will have this kind of page. So first you go to corpus details. All of the files in one folder can be loaded here by clicking the load files here. And then you can type your description of your corpus. And then you can save the corpus. You can use it later after you finish your job. Next, so if you click on the basic search here, it will appear a column and you can type whatever word you want to search the collocation. And then you click basic search here, and then it will appear like this. There are two columns. The first column in the left side will appear some instances or examples of the use of the word different. And then if you click on one of the instances here, you can have an example of the whole text, the whole sentences, so that your students can analyze how to use the word different in the right side column. Okay, next, you also can find the collocation of two words in the part of associated word search by typing the first word in the first column, look, and then the second words in the second column, at. For example, look at, and then you can click on the associated word search here, and the result will appear like this one, same as the basic search one. So there will be two columns. The first column will appear the instances or the examples of the usage of the word look at, and then in the right column you can see the whole text, the whole sentences, if you click on one of the examples here. And then you can also know how many words in your corpus when you click on the word frequency. Okay, and then so there are two columns. The left side column will appear lists of words, that is in your corpus, and then the right column will appear the frequency, how many times the words used in your corpus, in your documents. And next, so basically a discipline-specific corpus consists of many documents in the form of text-only files in TXT. It is in the form of research articles because I teach my student how to write research articles. And the research articles are specific to one discipline field of study. And the research articles have already published in reputable international journals. So I think, it is reliable to be your student sources in learning writing. For example, if I taught my students from biology department, so they already built some discipline specific corpus like marine biology corpus, plant physiology corpus, plant biotechnology corpus, molecular microbiology corpus, and etc. And then I also did a research how the students use the corpus and concordancing software, how efficient they use it, how succeeded they can get from the corpus and the concordancing software. So the result is the more discipline-specific corpus they use, the more grammatical constraints they can minimize in academic writing. And the significant decrease of the constraints in academic writing can be reached if the participants have positive attitudes and perception towards the use of concordancing software and a discipline-specific corpus. Because sometimes they are lazy to revise their mistake, revise their errors, and they are lazy to aware of their mistakes. So it depends. The success of the writing depends on their attitudes. If they are positive, they have positive attitudes, so they will practice more often, and their mistakes or their errors will be decreased. So I have a recommendation for writers who use concordance software and a discipline-specific corpus. First, yeah, the writers have to get training and practice in constructing a discipline-specific corpus and in consulting with the tool and corpus. And they also have to be aware of mistakes on their writing and have a good perception and attitudes, of course. I would like to have further studies in knowing how they have a good perception and attitudes towards the training and the tool, and how the process of making their own discipline-specific corpus, and how the students' willingness and interest to learn and fix their mistakes in writing. And I also want to know, want to compare the low-level EFL participants and the high-level EFL participants related to their performance in writing, in their success in writing, in consulting with the corpus and the concordance software. So I think that's all from me. Thank you for your attention. Yeah, so the topic is more practical. I hope this will give benefit for you. If you have anything you want to ask, you can contact me in this number, or you can email me in this address. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you so much. People have been commenting during the presentation, and let me read aloud a few comments, and probably, and there is one question as well. So some people write that, yes, we are using Corpus in our classes. They say that it takes a descriptive approach to language study. There are people who have never heard about the use of concordances, so you have opened up new perspectives for them. And I'd like to stress that Rizdika is interested in collaboration and joint research, so please feel free to write, and probably you will be able to explore this area, which seems to be new for you, and use this experience to foster your own research. There is a question from Alexandra Soblova, who writes, how do you make the corpus available to the students? Is it possible to share it? And another question from Evgenia Kotelnikova, who says, is the corpus you use free?
Yeah, so basically, I teach them how to build the corpus by their own. So they have to provide their own corpus, build and provide their own corpus. I only give the knowledge how to build their own corpus. And maybe someday, yeah, I have a dream, yeah. Someday their corpus can be, uploaded in the website of a university. So everybody comes from all around the world can access the corpus, and it will help us in learning English.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
There is another question. What other programs for automatic processing of the text did you use?
Another problem, pardon me?
What other software for automatic processing of the text do you use?
Auto text. I just I just open my Microsoft Word, and then, for example, I have the PDF document. So I only copy all the text and then paste it in Microsoft Word, and then I click on Save As, and then I select the plain text. So I select the plain text, and then it will appear a box like. Can I show you the way how to, Alex? Can I show you the way how to, to transform the file into the TXT file, maybe from Word?
Well, if you can do it very quickly because the time is running out, or there is another option. What we can do
Okay.
is, I'm sure people can get in touch with you, and we are running a Telegram channel into
Yeah,
which
yeah,
we
yeah.
can post the information from you. And I was just going to suggest that we post some information and some links to our Telegram channel. We can post links to free software, stuff like that, and advice from Rizdika, which I'm sure is going to be very, very valuable. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
And people are writing thank you. There is a person who
Thank you,
writes, what a
Alexei.
great presentation. And thank you for your
Thank you.
answer. I'd like to present our next speaker, Dr. Peter Stepichev, who is the Executive Director of the National Association of English Teachers of Russia and the Vice President of the Moscow English Teachers Association. And Peter Stepichev is famous all over Russia for his many inventions. When I say inventions, I'm not talking only about scientific discoveries, but these are true inventions which have been state registered and are used successfully in so many schools. And I'm sure that even if you have not heard about them, you're going to learn about them, because I have heard so many excited reports on the use of these inventions. So thank you very much, Dr. Peter Stepichev.
Thank you so much for the introduction. We work a lot together, have lots of projects and ideas, and I'm so glad I can share that at the conference today and together with digital publishers. So I'm full of ideas as usual, and I'd like to use my presentation time to share these practical approaches that I developed. The main approach that I use is called surprise pedagogy. My greatest idea, the most valuable idea that I might have, is that the key to education nowadays in this modern world is to get students surprised, because surprised people usually want to learn. The problem of education now is indifference. When people are indifferent, they don't learn. So today we'll speak about surprise pedagogy tools to tackle urgent challenges in education. So first of all, about the challenges. Just a moment. I hope I will not have technical challenges. Yeah. So that is a metaphor. That is not a sportsman. That is a modern teacher. Multitasking, overworking, struggling and striving. You see the guy is trying to do lots of work at the same time and still getting up. And that's a good metaphor of a modern teacher. A good student is usually like that. When a student is really ambitious, it is about the same. Like that's the way our students, our learners of English live. And in this situation, we realize that being overloaded with information, tons of different sources, different approaches, different data we need to remember, we need to do something with that. We have lots of tools. We have tools to structure information. We have tools to store information. But my idea is that information is not enough. We should humanize it. Some time ago, it was a challenge to add technology to education. So technology was a tool that worked. But today, we see that what students really lack is the personality of a teacher. Like if you want to learn some material, you can easily find it in the internet. But still, courses for teachers, courses for students, I mean for learners, tutors, private tutors, and all kinds of ELT professionals are very popular. I mean, students don't want to learn the material just from the net. They want a real person to teach them. And it's important to add this personality, to add this human touch to the material that our students are given. So at the lesson, we teach material plus give some part of our personality to our students. That's how it works. And an important thing here is that knowledge, to be well digested, should be given some delicious taste, like in this GIF animation. When we see that this baby is kind of manipulated into taking this spoon of, let me say, knowledge, maybe gerunds, maybe vocabulary. So this spoon, it's also a metaphor here. Chocolate is surprise pedagogy and the tools I'm going to speak about today. And the spoon of porridge is the material we want to teach. So when I ask my students, what is a good lesson? When I ask teachers, what is a good lesson? Many students and many teachers say that a good lesson is an interesting lesson. They use lots of adjectives here, but more than a half use the word interesting to describe a good lesson. And I went deeper into that and analyzed the words. Well, actually, interesting means arousing curiosity, holding and catching attention. And here it is connected to the word surprise. Like when people are, surprise means to strike with wonder or amazement. So when you are surprised, you pay attention to what surprised you. And that is an important thing because we have tons of information, but we should focus it. We should focus it differently. We can scare our students and say, okay, if you don't learn this particular rule, you will be punished. But it's much more productive to get students surprised and interested. I'll adjust a few examples. The first example is just from our conference landing. Usually conference landing, what we expect from a conference landing is a speaker or a bunch of speakers and the picture of people sitting in the room. Here at the conference, the SKY's conference, what catches our attention is the superhero person. And when you remember the images, you recall the images of the conferences, you're more likely to remember the superhero character, not just some unknown speaker. I mean, I just took a random IT conference. So that is an important thing to draw attention of our learners, students, audience, because education is about focuses, actually. So surprise pedagogy dwells on several aspects. First of all, what we can use at the lesson are the surprising facts. Here we've got two countries. Do you know what do these countries have in common? That is Australia and the United States of America. I have it in my course, America Online, which I'm going to have in June. So you can go to this link or join my page and get the answer. But I think I will share the answer to you as well now. Both countries are English speaking, which is quite easy. But a more important and interesting thing, in both countries, English is not an official language. So there is no federal law that you are obliged to speak English in the United States or in Australia. That's interesting. Many people think that if it is in English-speaking countries, it is a law. They have a law, federal law about it. But here, they don't have it. So it's a fact from culture, politics, general knowledge, that can be surprising for our students. One more surprising fact. I've got bounty here. All students know how to spell bounty because it's marketing. It's everywhere. Everyone knows how to pronounce bounty. No one says bounty. They say bounty. But not so many people know what it really means. Bounty means a reward. And Russian students, if they know this meaning, they can use it. They can say, okay, give me bounty. I'd like bounty. Where is my bounty? And they should be given not the chocolate bars, they should be given money or whatever they were promised to be given. So bounty also means a reward. So many people know how to spell it and to pronounce it, but not so many people know what it really means. These are surprising facts. When it comes to surprising methods, we should speak of tools. And that is what I love doing. I develop tools that help teachers to teach more effectively. What I do is I take some tools that should not belong to education. For example, a grammar mug. How can you use it in education? How can you use some, things from the kitchen in education? But I make it work in the classroom. I'll probably stop my presentation and show how it works in person. So I'm getting back to the camera. Do you see me? Yeah. So I stopped. Yeah. So now it works. So that is a grammar mug. So what I do, I go to my students with this mug, and I take, I don't know, Fanta or milk. It's the first time I'm doing it with the milk. Actually, usually I use something like Fanta because it's yellow, it's bright, but milk will also work. So I pour some milk here, and we can see imperative. So milk highlights the words. So you say imperative: help, read, eat. We add more milk here, and we have the highlight of a sentence. They help, I read, you eat. Yeah, still, I think yellow would work better because it's brighter. But anyway, we can see it. Here we've got a general question. Did they help? Will I read? Do they help? Can we play? So that's a general question. And finally, we've got a special question. So that's the way I teach word order. It is very much understandable by the Russian colleagues because we know that our students do not have, our language does not have the auxiliary verb here. So in Russian, you can say why you eat, and students will think it's okay, because in Russian we have such word order, why you eat. So students usually skip this. But if you skip it, it will mean that you have milk here, no milk in the middle, and milk again. So that's a problem. So we should have every element, actually. And it's important to put it in this order. So by pouring this milk, and even by drinking it, I show how grammar works, how word order works. One more tool is that I use, that is a patented tool in Russia, that is grape, grammar blocks. Why grape? Because it's a tool to grab grammar. I believe some theoretical aspects should be not just visualized, but should be made touchable. Students understand better when they have different senses to use. And definitely the idea of surprise here is also very important, because when you use a grammar cube, you use just 4 blocks, but these 4 blocks you can use to make 364 sentences. And that is surprising for students. They say it's impossible, especially when I tell them, okay, by the end of the lesson, in 20 minutes, you will be able to make 364 sentences in English. And they say that won't work. We are beginners. We don't know English. Well, we just don't know, the grammar rules and so on and so forth. I just give them the grades, and then they can make really 364 sentences with the help of these blocks. And all the sentences will be correct. So that's one more surprise for our students. And the last but not least tool that I'm going to show is this puzzle. And again, what surprises students is the particular result that I announce. We have 17 letters here, but with the help of these 17 letters, students can make 10,500 words. So when you say your students, okay, when you tell your students, like, by the end of the lesson, you will know everything about past simple. It doesn't sound really motivating. It's about learning one more rule. But when you're very precise and when you give particular numbers, students are impressed and they measure their success. And then they see that it's possible, it's approachable. So you can make words here. So I can, what words can I use? I can make the word NATE here, National Association of Teachers of English. So let's do it together. So I take N here. Oh, I'll put it, yeah. It's difficult to do it when you have it reverse, but I'll try. So A will go here. So we have NA already. NA, we need T. Yeah, T is here. And then we need E. So we spell words with our hands. So we learn how to spell, but doing so, we do not write. Usually, to learn to spell, you need to write words. And you write Friday, Thursday, Wednesday to learn how the word should be spelled. But here you do not write, you just make it with a puzzle. Yeah. So these are just a few examples of tools that I use. Coming back to the philosophy of surprise pedagogy, just a moment. Let me open the slides with the philosophy. Yeah, here it is. Yeah. Oh, it's the first slide again, but revision is also important. So surprising tools and surprising methods. Well, actually, in any sphere, the potential is defined by the tools available to specialists. If you build the house and you have great tools, you will build the house easier, yeah? And the house will be better. So my idea as teacher, trainer, and author is to create such tools, and I create them in this context of surprise pedagogy. And that is GRAPE, grammar cube, grammar blocks. That's what I said about 364 combinations, touching and touchable grammar, and kinesthetic learners, because, well, actually, learners are different. 1/3 of learners are kinesthetic, they need to touch things, and that's exactly what I let them do. On the whole, surprise pedagogy is not about this particular tools. Surprise pedagogy is about finding methods, facts, ideas that will give this first impulse to the students. They should realize that learning a language, on the one hand, is practical, on the other hand, is manageable, and which is more important, it is something that they personally need, and that is something that is personally interesting for them. I can show you one more example that you can use. I don't know, like today's Thursday, yeah, like you can use it tomorrow, for example, at the lesson. It doesn't need any particular tools. You can use it with young learners. So when I go to young learners, I ask them, well, children, tell me please, why do you need English? How will you use English? And they say a lot of things like, okay, we will read books, we will learn songs and understand people. So they say different things. And then I say that with the help of English, they are able to do some magic tricks. So magic is available for them. And I show them this trick. So you see, that's a bunch of materials, sheets. I just put them like this, and I'm holding it as if it flies. My students say, "Fly, please," and I make sheets of paper fly, and they're surprised. They want to repeat it. They say, "How can you do that?" And my message here is that English opens these magic doors. You can do magic things if you use English, because most of spells are in foreign languages, in Latin, like in Harry Potter, yeah? So magic is about a foreign language. You need a foreign language for magic. And students want to repeat it. Students want to do it with other things, like they say, okay, fly a book. Or they take a pen and say, okay, this pen, fly. And I can do it with anything, actually. It can also fly. Or my puzzle can fly. I will actually disclose how I do it, so you can try it with your students. And by doing so, you will add some surprise pedagogy trifle starlight to your lesson. So that's how I do it. That's pretty simple. But never tell your young students how you do it, because then the magic will disappear. So the idea here, teachers should humanize the materials. It's not enough to type past simple in Google Yandex, find 31 million results, and be happy with that. Students are not happy with that. They find a tutor. They look for courses, in English teaching courses. They look for a teacher. They need a person to teach them. And the more you add emotion to your lesson, the more you add surprise to your lesson, the more humanized the material is, the better. And it is especially important today when everything is like digital, you can download things. But again, I believe that modern education is still about the person who is teaching and about the person who is studying. So that is the key idea that I'd like to present today. I'm open to your questions. And here is a slide with my contacts, including the contacts of National Association of Teachers of English and our conference that had been mentioned, digital change in the ELT community. You can join our conference at natemissis.ru. That is going to be great. It's our 26th conference. So we've been doing it. Well, it's like most of my students are younger than the conference that we have. So that is going to be a great event, and I do invite you there. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, you can ask them now or later. Just a moment. Oh, I have something in the chat. Oh. Yeah, I see. Yeah, thank you for the questions. I do see the questions. I'll read them aloud. First of all, where you can get these tools. I have here, I have several partners actually, but my main partner who has all the games and it's kind of easier to order everything in one place. That is Play and Learn online shop. And I have, oh my goodness, that's it. Yeah, Play and Learn. Stepichev, you can see the last link here. playandlearn.ru. Or you can contact me directly as an author, and I can show everything and send it to you. One more question is about age limitations. Grammar Mug is used, well, yeah, I'll read the question aloud. So yeah, thank you for the characteristics that it's a brilliant idea to use Grammar Mug for the students. I would agree that this tool is best used with lower levels of students. What do I use for higher levels? Well, on the one hand, yeah, I do agree that for lower level students, it is better. But at the same time, I also teach adults, and for them, some of my tools that are viewed as toys, educational toys or educational games by lower level students, these adult students, they look at them as models. So it's no crime to show the Grammar Mug to adults if it comes to age, yeah? If it comes to level, definitely Grammar Mug is just about simple tenses. So we need more sophisticated tools, and I do have such tools. I have this grammar blocks. That is a simple one, and that is a more sophisticated one. It is printed on a 3D printer. And you can make any sentence you want, actually. That is, he wanted her to stop working. Let's say, okay, he wanted to stop working himself. Or maybe he just wanted to stop. So you can show how grammar works by adding elements like a constructor. And you can change the tense here. So again, it's for kinesthetic learners, but oh, he wants. We should add s here. It's possible to do so. Yeah. This tool is more sophisticated, but oh, it is here. Yeah. You can use it for any students actually. Yeah, just a moment. That's it. Yeah. Our NATE conference will be online. Yeah, it is online. Some other tools that I use cards. I play cards at the lesson. Irregular verbs, phrasal verbs, different vocabulary. It's more difficult to show cards online because as with any game, you should play the game to see how it works. It's not so easy to demonstrate it. But you can watch the videos of me and students playing games and my colleagues and students playing games like that to get a better idea of how it works for higher level students. Yeah, thank you so much for your attention. I'll probably give the floor to the next speaker, and if you have more questions, I can come back in a couple of minutes.
Dear colleagues, thank you so much. I will switch into Russian because the next commentary is going to be short and it is going to be in Russian. Уважаемые коллеги, мы счастливы приветствовать Татьяну Владимировну Черниговскую, великолепнейшего ученого, о котором вы все знаете. Это будет выступление на русском языке, но я буду комментарий Татьяны Владимировны переводить в чате в YouTube на английский язык для тех слушателей, которые слушают нас из других стран. Большое спасибо, что нашли возможность, Татьяна Владимировна, присоединиться, несмотря на то, что вы в командировке. Мы очень рады вас приветствовать. Большое спасибо.
Спасибо, коллеги. Я просто не знала о том, что у вас все пойдет по-английски. потому что если бы я знала, то я вообще-то могу это и по-английски сама сказать. Но уже как настроились, так настроились. Я не преподаю английский язык. Хотя после окончания университета я некоторое время это делала, но это в основном касалось английской фонетики. Так что я не буквально вам коллега. Но я коллега вот в каком смысле. Меня интересует, я поскольку занимаюсь языком и мозгом, меня интересует, что происходит в голове у человека, который перешел на другую образовательную модель. То, с чем мы столкнулись в результате этого несчастья, обрушившегося на человечество пандемии. Вот. И когда мы вынуждены были фактически все перейти на дистанционную систему преподавания, соответственно, студенты или школьники тоже на другую систему восприятия того, что мы им преподаем. Причем, как все вы, конечно, помните, сначала была паника, потом паника прошла, и даже появилось некое чувство такое, ну, ничего страшного, что ты сидишь дома, не обязательно тебе ездить, вполне можно и так это сделать, бережешь время, у всех есть компьютеры, почему бы не преподавать таким образом. Но потом, вот интересно, было у вас, поскольку я вас не вижу, я на экране вижу только себя, к сожалению. Вот, но поскольку мы все в одной упряжке все это время, вопрос, как так, почему вдруг начало возникать такое чувство, что мы страшно устаем, работая в Zoom? Это на самом деле не такой тривиальный вопрос, как он выглядит на самом деле. Потому что вроде бы ты сидишь дома, если ты не активно говоришь, а просто участник чего-то, то ты в конце концов можешь на время отключить камеру, сварить себе кофе. И вроде бы, да, на первый взгляд, ситуация гораздо более комфортная. Но время шло, и мы обнаружили вещь, которую вообще-то мы почти не можем объяснить. Это я уже с позиции своей науки говорю. Ты почему-то страшно устаешь. Совершенно непонятно почему. Я уверена в том, что это предмет серьезного научного исследования, потому что в такой ситуации человечество никогда не оказывалось. Моя предположительная версия пока что существует в такой форме, и мои друзья, экспериментальные психологи, склонны согласиться. У нас практически отсутствует фидбэк. У нас нет общения, настоящего общения с теми, кому мы преподаем, или с кем мы ведем научный дискурс какой-то, научный семинар. От того, что вот сейчас я тут поковырялась в своем планшете и нашла, сейчас я 4 вижу на экране. Ну и что? Это ведь фиктивное общение, это несерьезно. Я не знаю, где вы, я не знаю, как вы смотрите друг на друга, какие у вас духи, в каком настроении, какой походкой вы вошли, рядом с кем вы сели. Если вы думаете, что я шучу или играю, то я не шучу и не играю. Оказалось внезапно, что те вещи, которые не являются, как нам казалось, не являются важными, оказываются очень важными. Это вот, так сказать, я бы метафорически сказала, периферическое зрение. То есть я смотрю вот на предыдущего выступающего в данный момент, и мне кажется, что этого достаточно. Но я же не знаю, что вокруг него там находится. Может, там динозавры сидят, или там дети с ума сходят, или там человек с топором сидит. Я же этого не знаю. В каких отношениях вы все друг с другом, насколько дружелюбная или, наоборот, враждебная и конкурентная ситуация. Оказалось, что это играет гигантскую роль. И именно недостаток этого фидбэка, недостаток информации о том, кому ты это все говоришь, оно вызывает эту страшную усталость, а вовсе не то, что ты 3 часа в зуме просидел. Ну, до этой катастрофы пандемической, ну, слушайте, мы все очень много работаем. Бывает, что ты утром уходишь и ночью приходишь, и ты не в таком кошмарном состоянии, как после 3 часов в зуме, сидя у себя же на диване, да, и попивая кофе, и там кота можно чесать за ухом. То есть на первый взгляд вроде бы ничего. Я не собираюсь продолжать на эту тему. Это я объяснила, почему я все-таки согласилась несколько слов вам сказать, потому что эта история оказывается совершенно новой для человечества. Она совсем другая. Дело не в том, что мы стали работать в другом формате, что мы никуда не ездим, а смотрим в это окошко. А дело в другом, что то, как мы начали, а именно говорящая голова, вот что мы сейчас видим, вы видите меня, и я говорю так, как бы я говорила, если бы я была с вами в одном помещении и там с трибуны или без трибуны разговаривала. Но для занятия это не годится абсолютно. Что до нас дошло не сразу. То есть дети, дети мы детьми называем в том числе и аспирантов. Все они наши дети. Вот дети эти, наши ученики, им не нужен учитель, который является говорящей головой. Он не нужен давно никому. Потому что у каждого из нас в кармане или в ухе или еще где-нибудь находится гаджет, в котором поселилась Алиса или Окей Google или вся эта компания, понимаете? Поэтому если я захочу узнать, что такое синхрофазотрон, я узнаю это без вас. Более того, это узнает ребенок 3 лет. И это факт. Поэтому учитель, который единственный носитель как бы сакральных знаний, его больше нет. Хорошо это или плохо мы сейчас не обсуждаем. Лично я считаю, что плохо, но это 30-е дело. На самом деле такой учитель не нужен. А какой нужен? Вот опросы детей, а также школьников и студентов, когда им, это просто целое исследование было уже, когда им задают вопрос, вот на ваш взгляд, идеальный преподаватель или идеальный учитель – это кто? Поразительно одинаковость ответов. Ну, там это, конечно, не 100%, но это очень большой процент отвечает вот что. Он не говорит, я хочу, чтобы учитель был, который все знает. Этого никто не говорит. Они говорят, а я хочу, чтобы учитель был, который войдет в мое положение, который меня понимает, который мне сочувствует. Я должен понимать, что ему тоже трудно, а не только мне. Что это не мы загнаны в клетку, в которой нас там заперли, и вот мы там сидим теперь, скулим, а все загнаны в эту клетку. И что трудно всем. Знаете, почему это важно? Потому что если трудно только ему, то это значит, что ему трудно в 100 раз больше, чем на самом деле. Потому что психологически получается, что это ему только такая беда-то досталась, не вообще всем, а вот с ним эта неприятность происходит. Поэтому учитель, который преподносит информацию, не нужен никому. Нужен учитель, который объясняет, компьютер не объясняет. Как бы хороша ни была программа, она не объясняет. Ему нужен учитель, который помогает понять. Вот это, кстати, у нас просто времени нет сейчас об этом говорить. Это, между прочим, сейчас это один из основных пунктов. Вот я, поскольку кручусь в том числе и среди искусственных интеллектщиков, и во всяких этих семинарах участие принимаю, вопрос, как только ты задаешь, а ваша нейронная сеть с глубоким обучением или ваш суперкомпьютер, который как чумовой перемалывает там мегатонны информации, а он понимает то, что он делает или нет? Это не идиотский вопрос. Он выглядит как идиотский, а он не идиотский. Если у меня есть ученик-человек, который просто маниакально быстро работает, он перерабатывает, вот знаете, мясорубка, что ни кинь туда, он все переварит. Вот если у меня такой ученик, мне нужен такой ученик, а он сам себе нужен, он не нужен никому. Человек, который хорошо решает тесты, не нужен никому, потому что эту работу отлично делает искусственный интеллект. Для этого человек не нужен вообще. А какой человек нужен? А тот, который понимает. А тогда еще Капица, Сергей Петрович, с которым я была счастлива быть хорошо знакомой, и в передачах у него была, и коньяк с ним пила, вот не для детей вам говорю. Да, ну, короче говоря, знала его хорошо. Он говорил, нужно переходить от образования запоминания к образованию понимания. Абсолютно в самую точку. Мне для чего помнить таблицу логарифмов? Для чего мне этот маразм? Объясните. Он же не нужен никому. Хорошо, а если я задаю вопрос, вот этот человек, который все тесты по любому предмету, я думаю, вы как преподающие встречаетесь время от времени с такими субъектами, ему вообще все равно, что сдавать. Он тебе и металлургию сдаст, и историю средних веков, и музыкальную литературу, потому что у него так голова работает. Он просто перемалывает, как мясорубка или блендер, там, понимаете, он перемалывает любую информацию, а он понимает то, что он перемолол. Вопрос с очень неизвестным ответом. Компьютеры, суперкомпьютеры, которые работают с big data, вот о чем сейчас это, так сказать, мировой фурор, что они перерабатывают немыслимое количество текстов, которые, разумеется, никакой человек и даже группа людей не в состоянии переработать. Делают из этого выводы, классифицируют, вообще красота и благодать. А они понимают, что они делают? Из того, что они правильно сделали, следует, что они понимают? Это вы не думайте, что я вам дам ответ. Я просто хочу, чтобы вы об этом задумались. Вот понимание, вот что важно эта вещь. Поэтому ребенок, когда он задает вопрос, вот меня тут моя внучка изводила, взрослая, очень способная, способнее меня в 100 раз. Почему ты утверждаешь, что мысль нематериальна? Я ей говорю, потому что так считает вся наука Земли. Она говорит, и что? Вот это удар, понимаете? Это удар. Из того, что наука Земли не знает другого ответа, не следует, что его нет. Поэтому как раз вот для таких вопросов и для таких дискуссий нужен учитель. Для этого, а не для того, чтобы сказать, вот это стул, на нем сидят, там, вот это стол, за ним едят. Это вот он не нужен вообще. И того, чтобы вам голову не морочить. Сейчас все очень боятся чего? Что искусственный интеллект придет и сметет всех учителей. Такие мнения есть, они произносятся даже на довольно высоком уровне. И я очень сочувствую Герману Грефу, в частности, которого в этом и обвиняют. Дело в том, что я с ним разговаривала непосредственно. Он этого никогда не говорил. Он говорит другую вещь. И на самом деле я ему посылаю привет. Он говорит другую вещь. Искусственный интеллект должен избавить учителя от той работы, которая съедает его всего. Искусственный интеллект должен взять на себя всю бюрократию с этими идиотскими бумагами, от которых, ну, кроме несчастья нет ничего. Это, ну, мы же все понимаем, что мы друг другу будем голову морочить. Согласитесь, все это должна делать машина. Более того, машина может делать и еще кое-что, уже даже из нашей профессиональной, или точнее из вашей профессиональной сферы. Если у вас есть тесты, почему вы должны тратить десятки часов, если не сказать сотни и тысячи часов, на проверку этих тестов? Вот эти тесты-то, пускай он и проверяет, этот монстр железный, разве нет? Но из этого не следует, что учитель не нужен. Из этого следует абсолютно другое, а именно учитель должен быть возрожден в своей непосредственной изначальной роли. Учитель – это тот, кто учит с большой буквы, не натаскивает, как собаку Павлова там. Если не сделал, то током, а если сделал, то вот тебе конфета. Вот этого учитель должен не делать как раз. Он должен быть наставником, он должен быть помощником. Он должен быть, если уж так повезет, он должен быть доверенным лицом. Вот поставьте себя в положение ребенка сейчас. Во-первых, ему осточертели родители, братья, сестры, тетки, дядья, и все, которые в этой квартире уже год. Понимаете, не у всех виллы, скажем прямо, да? Все всем надоели. Взаимно. Ну, что лукавить? Я не знаю, куда транслируется то, что я говорю, но мне, честно говоря, все равно. Поэтому, и теперь представьте, куда ему деться, понимаете? Замордованный учитель, к учителю он пойти не может, потому что он рискует. Если он идет к учителю какой-нибудь дурацкий вопрос, типа того, который я вот уже в кавычках дурацкий, задает учителю, он говорит, ты тупица вообще безмозглый, и давай иди учи таблицу умножения, потом поговорим. Значит, к учителю он пойти не может, потому что он боится. И он заранее знает, что это негативные последствия. Я специально беру, я догадываюсь, что вы мне скажете, что не все учителя звери, и не все они глупые. Ну, вы же понимаете, что я этого не имела в виду. Вот, но ребенок в школу боится, к родителям он боится еще больше, потому что родители говорят, знаешь что, вот тебя в школу отдали, вот пусть тебя там и учат. Ты ко мне, главное, не приближайся. Ты не видишь разве, как я страшно занят? И что он после этого делает? Он берет свой гаджет, да? Значит, ребенку отдает один гаджет и ругается, что тот с ним слишком тесные связи включился. А сам в это время он, что вы полагаете, Кьеркегора читает? Он в это время в своем гаджете играет в идиотскую игру. И ребенок это знает. Итого, бабушки с дедушками вообще думают, скорее бы этот мир покинуть. Родители думают, господи, нарожали этих детей вообще. Что там с этим делать? Учителя думают, да вообще гори оно огнем. Буду сидеть, вышивать платочки, и эти платочки на Сотбис будут продавать потом за миллионы. Ну, я специально в такой форме игривой это все говорю. Понимаете? Значит, нужна помощь детям, реальная помощь. Детям, реальная помощь, учителям, честно говоря, я вообще не понимаю, как вы это выдерживаете. У вас просто немыслимая роль, потому что вы находитесь на передовом крае знакомства человечества с другим типом цивилизации. Вот что вы сейчас делаете. Человечество перешло в другой мир, мы прилетели на другую планету. Все, корабль разбился, обратно никто не прилетит. Это точно, это факт. Уж вы мне поверьте. Значит, надо как-то приспосабливаться и жить. И вы оказываетесь теми людьми, которые в первую очередь принимаете этот удар. Как вам вообще выдержать? Как вы выдерживаете сами? Нужна помощь вам, как психологическая, так и профессиональная. А как преподавать, если не говорящая голова, то что? Что тогда должно быть? Все эти институты педагогические, которые учителей готовят, они имеют ответ? Конечно, нет. Разумеется, нет, потому что они сами только что столкнулись с этим. Между тем, у них сверхважная задача. Они должны придумать, как должны выглядеть эти уроки, в которых есть огромное количество плюсов. А именно, зачем я буду рассказывать про итальянскую живопись, когда я включу фильм из галереи Уффици, и лучший из специалистов это расскажет. Причем лучший из тех, которые это умеют рассказывать непрофессионалам. Тут двойная задача оказывается. А именно, а чем займутся учителя, если все онлайн-курсы, лучшие мировые, включатся? Вы понимаете, тут здесь загадка на загадке. Почему я и говорю, это требует очень серьезной научной работы, чтобы придумать, как это организовать. Учителям нужно помочь для того, чтобы они умом не тронулись, для того, чтобы у них выдержали нервы, и встреча с необыкновенной ситуацией. Такая же помощь требуется родителям, которым, а вообще куда им деваться, на Марс, что ли, лететь? Вот им куда от этого деться? То есть психологи, профессиональные, когнитивные психологи, они должны начать учить тому, что в моей науке называется метакогнитивные навыки. Как справляться со стрессом, как улучшить внимание, чтобы, вы же как учителя знаете, какое количество детей с нарушениями внимания, с гиперактивностью и так далее. А что с этим делать-то? Мы констатировать-то можем, а делать с этим что? Значит, учителя должны знать, к кому они могут обратиться. Учителя должны знать, повторяю, свою роль для того, чтобы не вставать в идиотическую конкуренцию с лучшими онлайн-курсами, подготовленными интеллектуальной элитой в лучших университетах мира. С ними конкурировать нельзя. Нельзя. Короче говоря, вот заканчивая свою пламенную речь, я хочу сказать следующее. Студенты в широком смысле, то есть и дети, и студенты университетские, они хотят человеческого отношения и эмоций, это точно, это абсолютно точно. Они должны знать, если им тяжело, они переругались со всей семьей, им хочется поплакать, они должны прийти к учителю поплакать, а он не должен им на это сказать, у тебя есть бабушка, и у нее и плачь. Может быть, даже он должен сказать, знаешь что, какое счастье, что ты пришел, потому что я сама думаю, с кем бы мне поплакать. Ну, это я, так сказать, почти розыгрыш из этого сейчас устроила в этой своей речи. Но на самом деле я вполне серьезно. Они должны понимать, что это живое, что это не то, что они попали в какой-то мир, а все остальные вообще весело живут, и проблем у них нет, ведь это же не так. И конечно, огромную роль сейчас педагогическая наука должна играть. Она должна довольно быстро мобилизоваться и давать просто практические советы. Как должен выглядеть урок? Какую часть в этом уроке будут занимать, скажем, фильмы? Нужно ли там вообще какое-нибудь объяснение? Или наоборот, за 3 дня до урока дети должны получить какие-нибудь тексты или еще что-нибудь, или там фильм какой-нибудь, и сказать, вот вы это посмотрите, а потом мы это будем обсуждать. Ну зачем сидеть вместе и смотреть то, что они могут и так сделать? Так ведь? Понимаете? Или когда, я уже несколько раз приводила пример, я когда на первый курс поступила на филфак Петербургского университета, конкурс был 30 человек на место, 30. Значит, я туда поступила, прихожу на первое же занятие, как сейчас помню, английская филология называлась. Выходит дама, не буду называть, разумеется, ее имени, она была очень милый человек, только очень глупый. Она выходит, у нее желтая книжечка такая, как сейчас помню, вот такой толщины. Она ее открывает и начинает ее читать на лекции. Я подумала, кто-то из нас ненормальный, потому что если я не умею читать, то как я прошла конкурс 30 человек на место, расскажите мне. Если я умею читать, то она мне зачем это читает? Я могу лежа дома все это прочесть. Понимаете, это же безумная ситуация. Вот их мы должны избежать. Ребенок научился читать, пусть читает. Не научился, значит, нужно думать, как его научить, учитывая огромное количество проблем с дислексиками, дисграфиками, но это вообще другая тема. И, кстати, из них довольно большой процент очень способных людей, которые волей неподготовленности учителей попадают сразу в двоечники, потому что они А на О все время меняют или наоборот. Но это здесь же ни при чем. Но это другая тема. В общем, короче говоря, дорогие преподаватели и учителя, я вам желаю мужества, силы духа, не падать в уныние, куда нас тащит почти каждое утро. Вот. И давайте друг другу помогать. Для мозга, да, это другой тип работы. Вот то, что сейчас, вот эти дистанционные вещи, это другой тип работы. Мы к этому не привыкли. Никакая эволюция нас не готовила к тому, чтобы сидеть и смотреть в эти окошки, в которые я сейчас смотрю. Мозг не готов к этому. Особенно если речь идет об интеллектуальной среде. Не игрушки, понимаете, когда мышка попалась к кошке там. Мы же не про это говорим, мы говорим про серьезные вещи. Так что это перестройка нейронной сети. Да, нужно выяснить процент участия зрительных зон коры и слуховых зон коры, отсутствие эмоций или, наоборот, постоянная негативная эмоция. То есть этот мир, в который мы сейчас все попали, он требует работы. В данный момент я говорю про работу ученых, разного профиля ученых. Разумеется, педагогов, но не буду по кругу ходить, уже сказали, но и мозговиков. Мы знаем, что наиболее эффективно мозг работает не тогда, когда он работает как чумовой, а когда как раз создается впечатление, что он лентяй и мерзавец, этот человек, который лежит на диване и поплевывает. Именно в это время он сделает открытие. Поэтому как учителя, так и сами ученики, они должны в том числе и кое-что знать про то, как функционирует мозг у детей, у подростков, у взрослых, в каком возрасте что бывает, а также, что есть люди очень быстрые, но бессмысленные, а есть люди очень медленные, но необыкновенно талантливые. Поэтому и учителя об этом должны знать. Они не должны хватать того, кто тащит за собой мешок с пятерками. Вот мне этот человек вообще не интересен. У меня он в сумке лежит, компьютер называется. Мне интересен тот, по которому я вижу, что он умен. Мы же видим такие вещи. У него на лице написано, что он умен, но почему-то у него больше тройки не бывает. Двойки и тройки. Это должно вызывать большую тревогу. Потому что если он тупица, то вопросов нет никаких. А я вижу, что он, а почему он это делает? А вообще, как ему удалось получить эту двойку, это отдельная работа. Он просто ее вообще не мог бы получить никогда по его интеллекту. Значит, он делает какую-то другую вещь. И, возможно, судьба человечества зависит от его двойки. Именно потому, что он двойку получил, нужно задать вопрос, как это вышло, что здесь произошло. Я не знаю, я вас увела в какую-то совсем другую сторону. Я призываю, короче говоря, нас к вниманию, к снисхождению, к коллегам, родственникам и особенно детям беззащитным. Вот. И надеюсь, что нам удастся как-то к этой жизни привыкнуть. Иллюзий на тему того, что это временно, а потом будет иначе, иллюзий ни у кого быть не должно. Пути назад нет. Может процент измениться, понимаете? Кое-что все-таки будет происходить так, как раньше. Целиком не поменяется. С этим согласны все в мире. Понимаете? Мы должны смириться с этим. Вот теперь так. Спасибо. Я, мне кажется, заморочила вам голову. Я вижу, правда, только 4, но один из них я, так что 3. Вот. Но я вам желаю успеха. Мне еще сегодня предстоит 2 зума. И один уже был до вас. Это я к вопросу современной жизни. Выглядит она так. Если у вас есть вопросы, а у меня на них есть ответы, то я готова. И если есть время, я не знаю, как у вас там. Ну, кто-то ведет, наверное, поэтому отзовется.
Да-да, Татьяна Владимировна,
Да.
есть время, есть комментарий. Дело в том, что у нас идет трансляция на YouTube. Я в то время, пока вы говорили, я старался, по крайней мере, выжимки, пусть не на 100%, но то, что вы говорили, писать по-английски для наших международных участников.
О, я ведь быстро говорю, так что вам плохо.
Ничего, я какую-то часть успел, а потом мы сделаем транскрипт и выложим, прикрепим к записи уже полное ваше выступление, чтобы, не дай бог, не создать у кого-то ложного впечатления или как-то не так передать стиль, который имеет не меньшее значение, чем содержание. Я, с вашего позволения, прочитаю вам комментарии, которые успевали люди писать во время.
А можно я вас прерву на 1 секунду? Это к вопросу о фидбэке. Мне недавно мои бывшие ученики, которые уже, одна из них уже доктор наук, а другие там кандидаты и скоро будут докторами, они мне говорят, а знаете, 2 вдруг из них прокололись в этом году. А вы знаете, почему мы стали наукой заниматься? Потому что у вас каждый раз на каждом занятии были новые серьги. Понимаете, последнее, что мне в голову приходило в жизни, это думать про эти серьги. А они, оказывается, они все время это, а теперь что будет, теперь что? Ты никогда не знаешь, на что ты поймаешь этих людей, понимаете? Они попались в серьезную науку из-за каких-то серег там. Вообще, даже смех сказать. Это я про фидбэк, понимаете? Что вот это вот такое веселое, игривое такое бурлескное времяпрепровождение, оно свое дело делает. И из окошек что-то не очень это несется. Все, молчу.
Татьяна, я, с вашего позволения, прочитаю комментарии. Может быть,
Мгм.
вы решите как раз дать фидбэк по поводу каких-то из них. Один из
Мгм.
комментариев, что во время пандемии и всех этих самоизоляций возник огромный разрыв между обучением и воспитанием. И это один из комментариев. Коллеги пишут также, что учителя находятся на передней линии фронта,
Абсолютно.
потому что позволяют человечеству знакомиться с новой цивилизацией. Еще коллеги пишут такой деликатный вопрос, если можно. Не считаете ли вы, что при возрождении первоначальной роли учителя, его настоящей роли, мы можем прийти к выводу в какой-то момент, что очень немногие учителя способны соответствовать тем стандартам, которые сейчас существуют?
Можно отвечать уже
Да,
или
а
нет?
потом я следующий прочитаю.
Хорошо, я с конца начну. Да, именно так и будет. Окажется, что большое количество учителей не годятся для этой роли. Да, это так. Ну а что же делать? Понимаете, я же не иду в ласкало и не говорю, возьмите меня, я у вас буду петь, потому что я не умею петь. Правильно? Если я поступаю в хореографическое училище, я должна годиться для хореографического училища. Ну так или не так? Роль учителя сильнее всех этих вышеперечисленных. Да, есть те, которые не могут. Да, я уверена, что как учителей, так и врачей будущих надо не по тестам брать, а разговаривать с ними. Вот тех, кого принимают учиться, с ними надо говорить. И может оказаться, что это человек, которому ни в коем случае в эту профессию идти нельзя, потому что он за свою активную работу съест там человек 600. Они могли бы быть счастливы и веселы, эти дети, если бы они ему не попались. Ну, согласитесь, я цинично отвечаю. Да, это может получиться. Ну и что? Как во всех специальностях, в серьезных. Потому что те специальности, где надо просто пальцем тыкать на кнопочку, их не будет скоро, их не будет в течение 3 лет. Понимаете? Вот это-то как раз все будет делать искусственный интеллект. Мы же не об этом говорим, мы говорим о серьезных вещах. А в серьезных вещах, да, нужны способности. И теперь, что у вас первое что-то было, начала сначала, а что-то ведь вы говорили еще.
А я сейчас еще раз прочитаю. Коллеги пишут, не считаете ли вы, что при возрождении первоначальной роли учителя, настоящей роли, мы можем
Да,
прийти к выводу в
это
какой-то
я
момент, что не
поняла,
очень?
я ответила, да.
Мгм.
Да, что такая роль,
Что
да.
немногие способны соответствовать тем
Да, что
стандартам.
ну, может быть, не немногие, но будет довольно много тех, которые не соответствуют. Вот так вот. Вот это да. Но есть ведь и другие опасности. Понимаете, если сейчас есть онлайн-курсы, которые подготовлены звездами, вот, и мы не можем иметь специалиста по итальянскому возрождению в каждой деревне. Ну, это же дураку понятно, что этого не может быть. Правильно? Значит, да, но спасибо дистанционным всем вещам, и это правда. У нас есть возможность войти в любую галерею мира, в любой театр мира, смотреть любые фильмы про то, как там в подводном мире, не знаю, каракатицы с осьминогами сражаются. Там, понимаете, то, чего не было в помине, огромные ресурсы. Но с ними надо уметь работать. Это, если моя роль заключается в том, что я сказала: здравствуйте, дети, сейчас я вам включу фильм, тогда я действительно не нужна. В общем, это вызов. Да, это вызов педагогической науке и вызов отдельным личностям. Это правда. Так и есть.
Да. И я, с вашего позволения, 2 комментария заключительных тогда прочитаю,
Мгм.
потому что были некоторые вопросы, но вы уже на них ответили в ходе ваших объяснений, ответов на предыдущий вопрос. Один из комментариев от участника, если я правильно помню, из Перу. Я сразу на русском его скажу.
Мгм.
Человек пишет: уважаемая миссис Татьяна, нам нужна ваша системность и мудрость мышления о нас, учителях, и об образовательном процессе, особенно в той ситуации, в которой мы сейчас оказались. Вы нужны нам, учителям. Это
Ух,
один комментарий.
красота! А вот пускай эта зараза улетает к себе в преисподнюю, откуда и прилетела. Вот, и тогда откроются границы, и можно будет смотреть, как преподают в Перу.
Да.
Пока что мы же
Да,
видим.
и еще один комментарий, это уже из России, коллега пишет, Елена Рябикина. Низкий вам поклон, я с вами очень солидарна. Мы люди, и нам нужна любовь, и тот лучик света, который мы несем в сердца наших детей.
И ведь это правда, вы знаете, я сама от такого рода слов еще недавно, я думала, боже, ну вообще что это, ну это все давно известно всем, ну сколько можно про это говорить. Но если вот освободиться от как бы предыдущих знаний и всего этого, и отнестись к этому как к свежей вещи, то ведь это правда так. Мне не интересен человек, который знает, какой день недели был 16 ноября 1243 года в Норвегии. Мне не нужен этот человек. Зачем он мне? А мне нужен человек, с которым я могу поговорить, и чтобы меня отпустило. Так ведь? Жизнь трудная. Сейчас что творится? Ужас. Нам нужно иметь к кому пойти, так ведь? Ну, согласитесь, я попросту говорю. А детям несчастным вообще деться некуда. Но хуже всех учителям. Ну, ну, врачи, это уже даже нечего обсуждать. Вот, но учителям, они же атаку имеют со всех сторон на себя. С одной стороны, эти монстры, их начальники, которые их заваливают там тоннами бумаг, которые нужно заполнить. С другой стороны, родители, которые говорят, вы не умеете учить, я вам отдал ребенка, вот и учите его, этого ребенка. Ну и так далее. Весь набор. Тяжелая жизнь. Я вообще не понимаю, как вы выдерживаете. Я уже даже в каких-то лекциях говорила, что у меня был момент, когда мне все страшно осточертело, я думаю, ну к черту эту науку и вообще все это. Пойду учить маленьких детей в школу. У меня была такая идиотская мысль. Вот. Но когда я с ней немножко пообвыклась, то я поняла, что я боюсь, что я не могу войти в класс. Потому что я не знаю, это не то, что войти в аудиторию, где студенты. Я привыкла на огромной аудитории выступать, меня этим вообще не возьмешь. Я не боюсь никакого размера зала и никаких вопросов. Но это другая история. Ты входишь, там они маленькие такие сидят. Из них 2 Эйнштейнов, 3 Гитлеров, 4 серийный убийца, а 5 импрессионисты. А еще 6 и 7 великие философы. А остальные бездари. Да? Что предлагаете делать с таким классом? Что с ними делать? Вот вы как-то научились, а я подумала, думаю, я просто не смогу, я боюсь их, я не смогу с ними справиться. Поэтому, в общем, тяжелая у вас жизнь, но от вас зависит, будет ли человечество вообще. Я надеюсь, вы это понимаете? У нас есть угроза исчезновения нашего биологического вида. Это я вам говорю, уже как нейрофизиолог, потому что у меня как минимум 2 специальности. У нас есть огромный шанс вообще исчезнуть. Сколько видов исчезло с Земли? Счета им нет. А мы еще сами подбавляем этого всего. Да? Как ненормальные себя ведем, как умственно отсталые. Как будто нам есть куда переехать, например. Вы знаете, как кочевники, да? Здесь все испортили, сожглись, земля испорчена, все покрыто какой-то дрянью, переезжаем в другое место. Куда собрались переезжать, хотел бы я узнать. Как называется это место? Его нет ведь. Более того, и не будет, несмотря на происки Илона Маска. Который уже, вы же видели, он уже же этот чип в свинью засунул, и силой мысли ею управляют. Но слышали вы это или нет, я не знаю, а я не только слышала, но и видела. Уже в обезьяну этот чип вставлен, и ее мозгом идет управление. Вы понимаете, какой следующий шаг, нет? В общем, напугало всех. Но это я так, для веселья. Хорошо, я вам желаю всего хорошего.
Спасибо огромное, Татьяна Владимировна, большое спасибо.
Я не знаю, чего вы от меня ждали, честно говоря, но я, глядя на тех 3, кого я могу видеть, я почему-то решила так говорить.
Спасибо большое. Спасибо огромное за то, что вы нашли время в вашем огромном занятом расписании.
Да, у меня ужас просто.
Да, и мы счастливы, что столько людей из разных стран. У нас из 5 стран выступающие, и где-то из 8 стран слушают нас и смотрят на YouTube. Мы счастливы, что столько людей смогли услышать и потом прочитают еще и перевод
А
выступления.
вы знаете, я вас тогда попрошу, вы мне пришлите, пожалуйста, ссылку на вот это все мероприятие. Не на Zoom, а на саму эту конференцию. Я тогда это размещу на сайте Петербургского университета, и там огромная аудитория, вам будет только польза от этого.
Обязательно,
Если вы не
Феврония.
возражаете.
Да, с
Мне это
удовольствием. Будем
абсолютно
только рады.
незачем.
Да.
Но...
Я сегодня вечером пришлю. Огромное
Ну, или
спасибо.
когда там, когда сможете, тогда пришлете.
Да, я
Это
пришлю
сразу
сегодня.
пойдет в оборот сразу.
Спасибо огромное. Спасибо.
Счастливо вам, всего хорошего. Я тогда выхожу, найду сейчас красную штучку, на которой будет написано «выйти», и выйду.
Спасибо.
Спасибо вам, счастливо, всего вам хорошего, до свидания.
Спасибо.
Успеха всякого.
Спасибо.
Счастливо. Пока.
Спасибо. Dear colleagues, we have heard so many interesting ideas that we think it will be a good idea to have a 10-minute coffee break, if you don't mind. So let's have a break, and we will come back in 10 minutes' time after you've all got yourself a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, and have thought about so many things that we have been talking about. Okay, dear colleagues, we are back on air. It was just a short break, and I'm happy to introduce to you Ekaterina Kolesnikova, head of the School of Foreign Languages at Higher School of Economics. And let's not be deceived by the name. School here is used as the name of faculty. So basically, Dean of Foreign Languages, Higher School of Economics, Ekaterina Kolesnikova.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome, for the presentation, for the invitation. And let me share my screen. Just 1 second. Dear friends, dear colleagues, let me introduce myself just in a couple of words. Just a second. My name is Ekaterina Kolesnikova, and I received my PhD in second language education from Russian Academy of Science in 2009, and for 13 years I have been working at tertiary level, first at Moscow City University, then I joined HSC University, where I first served as academic supervisor of the BA program Foreign Languages and Intercultural Communication. And currently I'm head of School of Foreign Languages, and I'm responsible for second language education at HSC University for the ultimate performance of our BA, MA and PhD programs. And we also administrate research and international cooperation in the fields of applied linguistics and language teaching, intercultural communication, and translation. So it is great to see all of you here today, and good afternoon from me. And Alexei, thank you so much for the warm introduction and for the invitation. I'm happy to have been invited and join this very interesting event. So thank you so much for organizing it. And actually my talk is on current trends in tertiary level English language education. And of course, it will be the case of Russia, and I'm going to talk about our digital experience. And here I have a short description of this talk. This talk will be on the digital transformation of language teaching happening under the influence of highly competitive platform-based solutions offered to educational institutions by IT companies. And it will definitely look at how we set strategic goals and how we make operational decisions when rapid global change is an ongoing process in language education. And I will also try to show a complex approach to embracing new technology and making fundamental changes in order to truly adapt to new realities and flourish. And a couple of words about HSC University and High School of Economics and our School of Foreign Languages. It is important because further on I'm going to talk about the changes that we have implemented over the past year in our curriculum, in the way we organize learning, in the way we work with individualized learning trajectories. So we are really big, and we have 350 teachers approximately only in Moscow, and we have more than 10,000 students, and we deliver around 100 courses. And we do English for general communication purposes, English for academic communication purposes, for business purposes, for specific purposes. And also we do academic writing, English for research and publication purposes. And we teach around 40 courses to students of BA programs. So the reason I have decided to include all that was that we really have experience of online language teaching environments and how we adapt to the new normal, how we adapt to the realities of digital teaching. And the question I will try to answer is, how will that change the way we teach languages? This new normal, and this is this COVID experience that we have been through. I'm sure that many of you know what this chart shows. This is SWOT analysis. But first of all, let me give a very brief explanation of the method I have used for this presentation. Basically, SWOT analysis helps with strategic planning, and S here stands for strengths, T for threats, W for weaknesses, and O for opportunities. And we know that threats and weaknesses are the internal factors, and the opportunities are the external factors. And this SWOT diagram basically helps to analyze a system through the prism of these factors. And I'm going to use this type of analysis now because it is especially useful when we are trying to decide whether we want to embark on a certain new venture by clearly visualizing the positive and the negative sides of it and decide on how we want to move forward. So I'm going to use this analysis to this type of methodology to analyze how we teach English at HSC University. I will also rely on some of the presentations some of the webinars that I have watched when preparing for this talk by Andy Johnson, by Maria Davu, by Celia Antonou. I will be referencing to them further on. But first, let us look together at the weaknesses and strengths. And I actually do not want to separate them because, at HSC School of Foreign Languages, we stick to the values of positive and constructive approach to difficult and risky situations. And our philosophy is that please do not come with a problem, come with a solution, try to find it. So I will be commenting on the weaknesses, but simultaneously, I will be trying to expand on how we can actually turn these weaknesses into strengths. And I should also add that my discursive analysis will be based on the experience and of other universities and on some research that colleagues from European universities and from Russian universities have presented. So, I should say that the main weakness was the organizational weakness. We had actually not enough prior training in online teaching techniques when we faced the pandemic. And here I'm not talking about technology enhanced learning. And in Russia, we actually have a lot of good theory and we have a lot of professional training programs on that, but as well as distance learning. We are rather good at that, but at that point, teachers needed practical skills needed and required to operate new platforms, to use specific types of software. And so I should say that prior training and all that was really very important. And the second problem was now a lack of the necessary digital tools to deliver classes. It took all the teachers and the students some time to access online platforms, to figure out all their functions like breakout rooms, waiting rooms, multi-share, and check the purposes and features and the benefits and the limitations that can be provided. And we, of course, needed to provide recommendations and instruction. And we tried to do our best to help fast. The function of a chat box for feedback and the private messaging and sharing resources and error correction and short responses to questions. So we considered all that and how that could be implemented. But still, we realized that we still need more digital tools in order to deliver classes. And then the need to provide teachers with the materials and resources for online classes. And here I should express gratitude to all the partners who helped us. I saw how helpful people were during the pandemic, and the value of sharing really helped us to get all the e-versions of course books that we needed and all the platform solutions. And all our partners responded very fast. But still, I could identify these three as weaknesses. And I'm not the only one. I will give reference. Some of the information is from webinars shared by colleagues. Another problem is that another weakness is that we cannot and we should not copy offline when we deliver classes online, but we sometimes don't know how we should actually do that. And I'm gonna reference here to a wonderful webinar. And some of the points, some of the bullet points I added myself, and I'm sure we can all continue the list. Mariah DeVoe mentioned that, length and format of lessons, online lesson design. How do we record attendance when we are online? And what do teachers need when they work virtually, and what should a virtual classroom look like, and how do we organize workspace? And Tatiana Vladimirovna, the previous speaker, she mentioned that our feeling of space differs a lot when we are online. And again, the manner of delivery, and that teachers are very good at nonverbal communication, and we are very good at using gestures and mimics in order to deliver their message. But here it's not that easy when we work online. And also, how do we provide guidelines for online etiquette? Online etiquette is a problem because at the times of transparency, that is just not easy, because every word is recorded, every picture is taken. I see that Natalia Haydarovna is doing it. Really, yeah, we are always transparent. We are always very open. So we need to understand how we go about online etiquette. And I could, of course, continue the list, and I'm sure all of you could, but I don't want to go into detail, because I would say that there are more important things that require our attention today. Yeah, this I actually I want to also mention that a very interesting webinar by Andy Johnson also names some of the difficulties of online teaching. And what we also noticed lack of online interaction skills that turned out to be very much needed during the pandemic. The problem was that, I should not say that was a problem, but what we figured out, our students are digital natives, so sometimes they were faster than their professors in understanding how the platforms work, and in they expected professors to adjust immediately and use diverse formats for online collaboration, for online communication. And that was particularly important for language classes, because for most students, learning communication is the goal of learning a language. So it turned out that the majority of the students were better experts in online interaction than their teachers were. And they really expected us to use all the features of online platforms during class, and they sometimes provided very useful recommendation. And another problem that I'm sure all of us faced, and a lot of teachers mentioned that it was very difficult to find balance between synchronous and asynchronous formats. I know that we have all figured out our approaches to how we calculate the course load when we are online, how we design timetable for classes because of the time difference, and because some of the international students went back home, and how do we set the right time for these classes. And we cannot imitate the same online, and we realized that online teaching needs so much flexibility. We really need to be much more flexible about the formats, about the timing, about balancing synchronous and asynchronous when we are online. But I would still identify that as a weakness that needs to be turned into strength. And we also identified, and Maria Davu, by the way, was very explicit in her webinar on this topic of online assessment, you know, and how do we assess online? How do we track learners' progress? And, you know, how do we do that during high stakes tests and exams? And how do we build formative assessment, alternative assessment, and summative assessment? How do we assess the skills, grammar, vocabulary, reading, writing? So those were all the new questions that appeared and that we were supposed to answer, and answer real fast. And how do we prevent cheating? And how do we make assessment experience really meaningful? And, you know, at HSE University, we immediately learned the word proctoring, and we started using proctoring during the spring summer session exams, because all the exams were administered, not all the exams, but all the high stakes exams were administered with proctoring software that could ensure integrity of online assessment. And we used synchronous and we used asynchronous automatic proctoring, which we verified the answers and the tests afterwards. So I should say that we learned a lot during our examination session that we held last summer. And I should here agree with all the speakers who have mentioned the problem of emotional support that students and teachers need when they are online, because, you know, we felt the risk of not being able to offer support to students and to teachers. And also we noticed that the changes happening in the language teaching context were rapid, because we noticed that the environment is getting more and more competitive, and we are very happy to be partners with Skyeng, which is a very successful educational online platform. But we see how fast and how customized solutions offered by online platforms are, and classical higher educational institutions are not that fast. And our time to market, and when we need to implement a new change, when we need to innovate, we are just learning to be fast at that. And because, you know, we are about educational models, we are about designing educational frameworks for language teaching, for teaching other subjects, but we are not that fast with business models, with understanding how these business models will actually work in this new normal. And we also identified the problem of the digital divide, because not all of our students had access. Well, they all had access, but the quality of that access was sometimes different, and the digital divide, and that was a problem, because at first some of the students could be really left behind because of the lack of the appropriate devices, but we really tried to help them, and the university helped them. But again, that was a weakness that we identified in the system. And prolonged working hours, that was another problem, and lack of highly trained digital specialists ready to work in education, and prolonged work hours, because basically we lost sense of when work stops and when work begins. And you know, it was difficult to understand where your work life ends and where your private life begins. So prolonged work hours, that was what all our teachers mentioned. I'm going to use a wonderful quote. It's the result of the research carried out by Celia Antonou, and you know, they figured out that among teachers of their university, they observed the feelings of uncertainty, the feelings of helplessness, and the pressure of constant need for innovation, change, and improvement. I particularly like the second part of this inference from the research, because constant need for innovation, change, and improvement, that can give a lot of stress. that can give a lot of pressure to teachers. And I should say that they all share that they really, they are really under a lot of pressure to come up with new ideas and solutions real fast. And but still, of course, what are the opportunities? I have been talking about all that just to come up with a solution. So what should we do? How do we make the system work? Like I mentioned at the beginning of my talk. So how do we work the system? Definitely, we will update our teaching practices and we will build new language teaching frameworks. Yeah, new frameworks are really needed. And one of the speakers today presented quite a lot of those. And we need to be very good at creating new, fair, reliable, and valid assessment tools, and that we will be able to use when we are not sharing the same space. And that very often requires new approaches and designing some of those from scratch. And we will, of course, reinforce and develop the culture of sharing. It is very important because teachers help each other. They provide each other with course materials. And I should say that the scale of opportunity here is hard to imagine. And I should say that a new culture of sharing has emerged. And we will have courses assembled from freely available online materials. And here we need to organize language teaching experts to develop adaptive language learning systems. And there are a lot of open resources that could be applied for that. And of course, we need to be real quick at designing programs to meet the training needs of teachers and building language education communities. We have a lot of those in our professional field, but I should say that each big school like ours, which has, like I mentioned, 350 teachers, we realized how much we really need community that is constantly communicating and supporting each other. And of course, we will build language. We will get more flexible in the way we use online formats. And again, here I want to share an approach designed by Celia Antonou, like when she was sharing her experience of the way they tried to work in hybrid formats. So it's very important to find a balanced approach to online and offline activities. And they experimented with half and half on site, so half online and half on site. They experimented with sandwich, online session at the beginning of the term, then remote, and the final session to conclude a teaching period. And they also tried on-site while remote students catch up online. At HSC University, we also did a lot of that. And of course, we all experimented with online formats. So the idea of this talk was to use SWOT analysis to analyze the threats and the opportunities that the new normal has to offer. But there is another question that I asked myself at the end. So can we use the so-called trial and error approach and see how that works? And, I'm not sure, because this approach requires time. Unfortunately, we do not have time to make errors. We need time to research, to think quick, to come up with solutions. We need to share our ideas with each other. And it would be very important for us to come with the solutions that are gonna work fast. And I'm sure that will help us to reinvent new models of language education together. Thank you so much. Should you have questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Okay, thank you so much for the very interesting presentation, which has helped us to learn how the language programs and the work of an entire faculty can be changed and had to be changed because of the current situation. It seems that people are saying thank you in the chat, but there are no other questions. So thank you very much. And now I'd like to introduce our next speaker. The next speaker is Natalia Frolova. She is the head of the Department of Foreign Languages at Linguistics University of Nizhny Novgorod. And the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So it's great honor for me to dwell my speech after Professor Chernigovskaya and Dr. Kolesnikova, and it's my real pleasure that they have just bridged the gap between the real issues, the real state of events, and the problems that teachers face during this just coming back to normal reality. Okay, so the topic of my speech today is virtual reality in English language teaching. And in particular, I'm going to focus on the case of teachers training. So I will start briefly with the definitions of just artificial intelligence and the launch of the Teachers Excellence Center, focus on the modeling of the first class for teachers with the help of a virtual reality helmet or glasses. And I have prepared several tasks for you guys, so I want you to get involved in active learning as it is, and response in chats. Please don't hesitate. Even if it is a crazy idea, I want you to put it and we will discuss it. So, and I will conclude with the benefits, of course, and stepping stones. As Ekaterina Alexeyevna has already mentioned, so there are several ways of introducing new technologies into the teaching practice. There's various type of classifications, and one of them that I have cited just has 4 of them, right? If you use fragmental web tools, and that is 100% sure that we all do. Quizlet, Kahoot, quizzes, Google sites, Google Drives, genuinely whatnot, right? But that is not in the syllabi. So, and the second type is blended learning, when we have 50 face-to-face classes and 50 online classes. That's the combination of the conventional English class and a new digital model. Hybrid learning, that is the just about 80% online and 20% offline. So it's a precious stone, as the previous speakers have said, when you communicate in person. Those extra linguistic components and the personal brand of the teacher influence all the students, no doubt. But in the period of pandemic and just those lockdowns, there was the only way. And for many underprivileged kids who are just out of reach for traditional schools, that's a brilliant idea. And e-learning, so is 100% of dwelling classes online. So digital transformation, actually that's the buzzword nowadays, but I want you to bear in mind the fact that artificial intelligence was touched upon in the end of the 20th century. So it took us about several decades to catch up. And as Professor Chernigovskaya has mentioned, artificial intelligence, it's just the digital tool, right? So it assists teachers, but it does not replace us, right? So that is the just perfect tool to accomplish certain tasks. So as for the introduction and blending digital tools into educational sphere, here is the just pre-story. If we just try to look back on the steps of digitalization. If you do remember, there was the program for computerization of all schools, including remote areas, and it was just dated back to 2002. And now there is a new program of computerization of all schools that is to be finished up at the end of this year, forthcoming year. So we see the process is a very, very long lasting. It's not just the overnight surprise. It takes ages for teachers to get accustomed, because just about 20 years ago, the majority of teachers were reluctant. They didn't just get delighted with the idea, and they used only a piece of chalk and blackboard. So now we have transformed not only the manner of education, we have transformed the mindset of people. And as we just have discussed, it's just the technological progress that is unstoppable. So lots of things are used daily without sometimes our not being aware of it. So deep learning, Corpus that has been mentioned, linguistics, corpus linguistics, neural networks, automatic face recognition, big data, Internet of Things, smart houses, smart homes, smart learning management systems, right? And it turns out that several universities even use digital footprints. So we are all under the cosh. Big Brother is watching us, right? And the universities trace the potential applicants for the forthcoming year. So those gifted students, those talented ones, they would try to get ignited and invite to the university. So what I'm going to tell you is the project that is called the Teacher of the Future. As the majority of Russians are sure to know, there is the national project that is under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Higher Education, and the project is superb from the point of view of focusing on the needs of underprivileged kids, on the needs of those schools with low academic performances, on the just talents of the students, and in response to those needs, to meet those needs, to bridge the gap, lots of programs were launched. Quantoriums, iCubes, and the Teacher of the Future projects appeared. So it started in 2019, and the idea is to provide the teachers with the assistance, methodological, and the computer-mediated ways of studying, right? So the idea was to increase the level of awareness of existing learning methods. If we take, for example, foreign languages, task-based learning, English as medium of instruction, CLIL, and so on and so forth, right? Okay, and the idea, so the logic behind was to provide the technical assistance to those in need. But our opinion poll with the young teachers, those who have not reached the age of 35 at schools, showed very interesting results, unexpected, I would say. As you can see, judging from the pie chart, the majority of the respondents rank the information communication literacy skills pretty high. So if we just see 5 up to 10 is the maximum, right? And the need for the assistance, that is the left-hand pie chart. But surprisingly, though the representatives of the new generations are digital natives, nevertheless, they would require special classes, training courses to get to know all those brand new technologies and teaching methods. So, and what do we offer? We have provided special trainings and singled out individual tracks of education. And the brand new project that I'm going to just to tell you about, highlight, is the virtual reality in English language teaching. So actually that is the prototype. And I would appreciate if the assistant would send you the link in chat with the YouTube link where you can have a look at the program I'm talking about. So It all started in school in 182 of Nizhny Novgorod, where small kids had their class of English, and the process was taken to the 3D camera. So the idea was to assist teachers who, as Professor Chernigovskaya has mentioned, are afraid of taking their first steps. Kids are too small, they are fragile, and every wrong action can have painful consequences. For this reason, the idea is to provide the newcomer to school with assistance. We imitate the reality of the real-time class with live kids, with a live teacher, and we analyze what went wrong. So if you have a look at the YouTube link right now, so within the time appears the bubble with the problem. So your task is to say what is wrong. If you have a look at the left, you will see the instructions, those classroom management words like just prepare your textbooks, open your textbooks on page number, blah, blah, blah. And if you have a look on the blackboard, you will see the just to say bubble with the stages of the class in terms of methodology. For example, that is introduction, that is phonetic exercise, or that is stage of scaffolding or eliciting the feedback, or just acquiring new lexics, and so on and so forth. So now I want you to solve some dilemmas. So if we have a look at the video on YouTube and have 44 seconds, the first question arises: what should the teacher do if not all the students are engaged? How is it possible to increase student engagement? I would appreciate if you chat your answers. So, for instance, it could be just interaction, individual appeal to a person. It could be some gamification, right? It is not the common mistake, but majority of teachers ignore the students, right? So they focus on the most active. And if small kids are not given attention, they could show low academic performance results. They could be demotivated, right? So are there any comments? What should an experienced teacher or a newcomer do in the classroom if it lacks students' engagement? So is it possible to just talk tete-a-tete with the person, or you'd better avoid just discussing some issues in front of the whole group? So I would be grateful if you could read aloud. I see that there is the comment in the chat, but I cannot read it right now. Okay, just a sec. All right. So the question number 2. If a kid has made a mistake in pronunciation, should you put a wet blanket on it? Or should you just encourage him to transmit the message, ignoring some imperfection of pronunciation? If we have classes simultaneously with foreigners, they do not put down all the mistakes as the Russian teachers do. They focus on the message transmitted, right? And there is the offer to assist a child, to provide him a helping hand, to make it in chorus, or to whisper to his ear, right? So the ideas could be wild at first sight, but they are worthy. Okay, if you type, just let me know. The problem number 3 is that some of your students has lost his pen or pencil? Should you punish him for it? Should you just put a C or, I don't know, just low grade in his grade book? Should you ask his parents to come? No, you would just increase group work, right? You would encourage him to share or to get a pencil shared, because as Ekaterina Alexeyevna has mentioned, sharing is caring. And that's true not only for the teachers, for the kids as well, especially in the digital era when they are sitting glued to TV screens all their days long. Those human interactions are valuable, right? So, dilemma number 4. If there is the core of the group, the teacher works with, what should other kids do? Someone is just enjoying his time, another one is crying. So that could be a chaotic start of your teaching practice. You should be psychologically ready, or perhaps they would want to go just half of the class to go out for just certain reasons. So those situations that could be discussed before letting a teacher into the classroom would help him to be psychologically ready, to be methodologically ready, and to focus on the class itself. So it would be a way to get rid of those myths and fears and threats that could possibly arise during your first class. So as you can see, the teacher training program center is working rather successfully. So we have accomplished lots of training programs and received positive feedback. So there are several scientific laboratories working under the project, and we have high professionals, those members of NAID, and we have arranged some seminars where Piotr Stepichev told us about his perfect tools and interesting ideas, Tatiana Grigorina Terminasova, and lots of very, very interesting and reputable speakers. There were special seminars focused on your soft skills and burning out syndrome and the ways to avoid it, because it's actually a problem, and not only because of the distant learning, not only because of lots of Zoom sessions. That is the just usual way of developing. So when you start your teaching career, it's like the honeymoon, you love everything. And within the time, the routine makes you bored. And if you don't relax, if you don't change the activity, if you don't strike the right balance between work and your free time, between your family and your career, so you could be burnt out. So lots of things that would be interesting for our potential teachers, for our listeners, were taken on board. So, and we are happy to announce the results. As you can see, those digital tools are taken happily by the teachers, and the marks are pretty high. It's like the 4.5. So, and as for the recommendations, some would recommend to introduce more tests, so more videos and podcasts, so and audio files. So as you can see, you should focus on various kinds of learners. Some would prefer to write, some would prefer to listen, others are visuals, right? So you should bear it in mind, undoubtedly. So here is the link to the surveys we have carried out, the preferences of the teachers and the gaps. And surprisingly, the threats or perhaps the weaknesses were not linked with digitalization. The gaps were mostly on how to single out a talented student, for example, or on the methods of teaching those kids who have some health problems or underprivileged ones. So special pedagogy and lots of detailed or narrow areas were to be addressed. Okay, of course, there are two sides of any medal, and there are some challenges that we're going to overcome. So, as I have mentioned, no special training for the teachers who are working with those kids. Low teachers' motivation. Sometimes when we arrange training programs, teachers are too tired after the load they have on their shoulders and after long hours. It is not possible to just perceive new information and get ignited, right? And as the previous process, just research and development requires from 5 to 10 years, and we don't have too much time. So, but nevertheless, there are some fruits, some results that we are happy to bear. And first and foremost, we introduce peer learning when the students or the kids help each other, when they listen to each other and they correct, because if your peer would correct your mistake, it wouldn't be so insulting and just compared to the being facing the music in front of the whole class, right? So sharing, as I have mentioned, methods of active learning, and here is just the perfect opportunity for those who just are quick at doing tasks and procrastination. It depends. And if you have your individual speed, and if you can have several times of access to the just program or virtual reality glasses, so that just eliminates lots of potential psychological problems. And the teachers and the kids would have instant feedback. So here is the list of the literature that could be used. And that concludes the formal part of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. And don't hesitate to ask questions if you have any. Thank you, guys. Now I can see your comments. Anna, right. You should have some pre-watching and watching and after watching activities like warming up. Thank you for mentioning that. Pretty Jacob believes that we should assign a role of individual or peer work. Thank you. A brilliant idea. Correct. And it's easy to ask them to make small presentations. But if kids are just beginners, if they haven't acquired just knowledge enough, perhaps not the presentation, right? But not the performance. Or are you talking about theater performance? Perhaps I misinterpret the idea. That would be great. Kids love games, right? They would be happy to dramatize. Oh, thank you, Evgenia. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here. And thank you, Alex, for inviting. Dear colleagues, I do hope that you would be successful in your teaching career and you would use the link and solve all dilemmas that could possibly arise on your way to success. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, our final speaker, unfortunately, is unable to connect because due to weather conditions, to sudden torrential rain, the internet connection is unstable. That means that we are going to conclude our conference. I'd like to thank so much everybody who has been able to speak at the conference. I think it has been a really interesting and we have all been given a lot of food for thought. I would like to once again call upon you to take part in student registration contest. For those who joined the conference later, I'd like to say once again how you can get into that contest. Your students can get access to free learning content at uniskias.com. This is language teaching materials, both textbooks and online courses and a lot of interesting things. And you as teachers can get prizes. If you are outside Russia, the prize is a certificate to buy things on Amazon.com, and this certificate is worth 400 United States dollars. And if you live inside Russia, then this is a 30,000 ruble certificate for Ozon. And to take part in this contest, you need to do this. Just a second. Yes, you log in onto Sky's platform. Once again, the address of this platform is uniskias.com. Then you register there as many students as you can. You give them at least 2 homeworks to do. It can be from any course, from any material which is suitable to the level of your students. And then on May the 30th, the participant who registers the greatest number of students will get either an Ozon certificate or an Amazon certificate, whichever you prefer. And also there is a grant contest organized by Rosobrsoyuz, Russia Education Union. You can find the information here, and the grant is 1 million rubles for your student development project. The descriptions are all there on the website. This is the website, so please take a look. Once again, I'd like to say that the recording of the video recording of the conference is going to be available the moment the conference is finished. It is going to be at the same address, but there are extra video presentations from two more of our speakers, Andrew Hadland from Brazil and Antoine Mark, who has a language school in St. Petersburg, Russia, but who is originally from Belgium and Canada. You can find all the recordings as well as the video recordings sent during the pre-conference weeks on the conference platform. So feel free to go there. Let me show you the address where you can find the information. It was our superheroes in digital teaching marathon. And I'd like to thank all of you so much for joining us today and for spending so many hours. I'd like to thank you for your comments. I'd like to thank you for your interests. And I'd like to thank you. I'm looking at the comments in case I've missed something. Feel free to ask any questions you'd like to ask. I see that people are saying that this has been a very interesting material and we need to go back to it. It's been helpful, motivating, and we need to think about it. Thank you so much for the great ideas and information. We are hoping to hold another conference, hopefully in the autumn, when we are back to work, and would like to wish all of you a successful finish of the academic year. We would like to wish all of your students good luck, and we'd like to wish you to have a good rest in the summer so that digital creativity, and not only digital, but otherwise any kind of creativity, would be something which would stay with you every day. By the way, in case you have not subscribed to our Telegram channel, please consider doing so. Let me show you the address of the Telegram channel, because we'll be posting not only conference materials and some other materials there, but also helpful hints, helpful materials, and links to useful resources. Also, we send out regularly digests of useful information, like publication opportunities, good conferences, some useful tips, advice, and links to some good video resources. So feel free to subscribe to our materials, stay with us, join our platform, enjoy the use of all those English language teaching materials, and let's work together to create a more interesting academic environment and a more effective one. Thank you so much for your attention. This is the end of our conference. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them now. Okay, thank you very much for your kind words. Thank you. We are finishing for now. Goodbye.